Chapter 141 Become a Genin. Uchiha Makoto still didn't recover from the shock. Hyuga Fujihawk is actually dead. Real or fake? This is incredible too. Is it really what Lee Yi did? Uchiha Makoto knows Lee Yi better than Sarutobi Hiruzen. He knows what kind of person Lee Yi is, and knows that once Lee Yi has a goal, he will do anything to achieve it. If Lee Yi had murderous intentions towards Hyuga Fuji Eagle, then, the death of Hyuga Fuji Eagle would definitely have something to do with Lee Yi. However, Uchiha Makoto also knows that Lee Yi is someone who likes to weigh the pros and cons. The reason why he sets a goal is because after weighing the pros and cons, he believes that it is beneficial to him to achieve this goal, so he will set a goal. What is the benefit to Lee Yi of killing Hyuga Vine Eagle? Uchiha Makoto can't think of it. In Uchiha Makoto's view, killing is like a rattan eagle, it does nothing to Lee Yi. Not only will he not get the slightest benefit, but it will also arouse the hatred of the Hyuga family, and even be met with crazy revenge from the Hyuga family. You must know that no matter how rebellious Hyuga Fujihawk is, he is still a member of the Hyuga family, and his life and death cannot be decided by an outsider. Lee Yi to do this kind of harmless thing. However, for some reason, Uchiha Makoto always felt that the death of Hyuga Fujitaka must have something to do with Lee Yi, and it was not a shallow relationship. This is her sixth sense as a woman. After you leave Hokage's office, ask him in detail. Uchiha Makoto narrowed his eyes and made a decision in his heart. And Sarutobi Hiruzen is different from Uchiha Makoto. Sarutobi Hiruzen is Hokage, he does things with evidence. First, he has no evidence that Lee Yi killed Hyuga Ivy Eagle. Second, there is no need for Lee Yi to kill Hyuga Vine Eagle. He thought exactly the same as Uchiha Makoto. Killing Hyuga Fujitaka would do all harm to Lee Yi, and Lee Yi is not a fool, why would he do such a stupid thing? Moreover, Lee Yi also personally said that the death of Hyuga Fujihawk had nothing to do with him. Therefore, Sarutobi Hiruzen will choose to trust Lee Yi. Sarutobi Hiruzen first came to a conclusion through objective analysis and then based on what the parties said. No, this is your reward. Sarutobi Hiruzen took out a bag and threw it to Lee Yi. Lee Yi took it. There is money, materials, and a few scrolls for cultivation. Sarutobi Hiruzen explained. Also, there is a genin forehead guard inside. Huh. Lee Yi immediately narrowed his eyes. Genin's forehead. In other words, I am now a genin. Uchiha Makoto immediately asked. Lord Hokage, in order to become a genin, you must pass the exam, are you sure you want to do this? Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded slightly. Lee Yi has done a lot of work. Logically speaking, I should make him a chunin, or even a special jonin. However, some people don't want to, so I only let him become a genin. Having said that, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked at Lee Yi and said, Lee Yi, from now on, you are the genin of Konoha village. If you make another contribution, no matter how small it is, I will make an exception and promote you to chunin. Thank you Lord Hokage. Lee Yi nodded his thanks. Well, go back. Sarutobi Hiruzen waved his hand. Lee Yi left. Uchiha Makoto stood there, not moving. Makoto, do you have anything else to do? Sarutobi Hiruzen asked. Uchiha Makoto head taps. Lee Yi walked out of the room. Uchiha Makoto was in the room, not knowing what to say. Standing in the corridor, Lee Yi opened the bag and took out the forehead guard in the bag. Leaf, sign on the forehead, Lee Yi smiled and murmured, Genin. Genin after graduating from ninja school. Lee Yi also attended ninja school when he was a child, but with his ability, he could not graduate at all. Therefore, he failed to become a genin. Also, he is not as skilled as a yame. So, when his parents died, he started being bullied. Uchiha Fugaku felt that a waste like Lee Yi, who had neither combat power nor any skills, should not live in this world, but should die. Living is a waste of air. After putting away the forehead, Lee Yi suddenly smiled and murmured, "Suddenly I want to be Chunin." You know, once a ninja becomes a Chunin, there is a special set of clothes. Genin's logo is the forehead guard. Chunin's logo is not only a forehead guard, but also a tailor-made ninja suit. 2 weeks of devil training, a quarter of the way. After 2 weeks, my strength will be at least at the level of Chunin. Lee Yi touched his chin and thought to himself, at that time, I can become a Chunin with just 1 more credit. This speed should be able to break the record of Konoha village so far. Thinking of this, Lee Yi was suddenly a little excited. Let's see if we can break the Konoha village record. He doesn't hold any grudge against Konoha village, he just holds grudges against the people who bullied him. Therefore, although he has turned black, he is not ready to attack Konoha village. Just then, crunch. Door was pushed open and Uchiha Makoto came out. Finished? Lee Yi asked. Uchiha Makoto head taps. Lee Yi, then let's go. Good. Uchiha Makoto nodded again, but then changed the subject. However, you are not curious about what I said to Hokage-sama. It's your private matter, you can say it if you like it, or don't say it if you don't like it. Lee Yi shrugged. I don't want to lie to you either, what I told Lord Hokage was about you. Uchiha Makoto looked at Lee Yi and said solemnly, the speed at which your strength has improved has shocked me. To be honest, I have never seen a person whose strength has improved so quickly. Yesterday, I went back to the Uchiha family to read ancient books. Among them, there is only one person whose strength can improve as fast as you. Do you know who that is? Uchiha Madara. Lee Yi said these 4 words with a smile. Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. How do you know? The great name of Uchiha Madara. No one knows no one without Akatsuki. Lee Yi replied lightly. Uchiha Makoto nodded. Suddenly his face was serious, and he said in a low voice, all in all, I think your potential is no weaker than Uchiha Madara. If you can get proper training, then your future achievements will definitely be comparable to Uchiha Madara. Having said this, Uchiha Makoto paused for a while before continuing. What I told Hokage-sama just now is about this. I asked Hokage-sama to send someone to pay attention to your psychological changes. Don't be like Uchiha Madara, with after gaining strength, he did something harmful to the village. Chapter 142-Smart but mistaken by smart. The two were walking on the road. Uchiha Makoto asked, Lee Yi, tell me the truth. Did you do the death of Hyuga Fujihawk? Lee Yi immediately shook his head. It's not me. Does that have anything to do with you? Uchiha Makoto is not asking. Lee Yi shook his head again. It doesn't matter. Really? Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. If you don't believe me, then you don't need to ask me such a question. Lee Yi shrugged. Uchiha Makoto explained. It's not that I don't believe you. I just think that the last few people Hyuga saw before he died were us, and we were the most suspect. Don't do bad things, don't be afraid of ghosts knocking on the door. Lee Yi said lightly, I really didn't do this. Even if someone doubts me, I'm not afraid. There's no fire in the paper. Who killed Hyuga Fujihawk? I believe that one day I will. The bottom line is out. That's right. Seeing Lee Yi's stubbornness, Uchiha Makoto believed it. She nodded lightly and said, the truth will always come to the surface, it's just a matter of time. I also believe that you didn't kill Hyuga Tengying. After all, killing him is for you there is no benefit in the slightest. Quote. Lee Yi did not speak. Uchiha Makoto asked again, then who do you think killed Hyuga Fujihawk? It's not us, it's the Hyuga family. Lee Yi shrugged. The Hyuga family may think that Hyuga Fujitaka is a burden and humiliates the Hyuga family's reputation, so after taking him home, they found someone to deal with him in secret. This possibility is very small. Hyuga Fujihawk's sister-in-law is one of the best in the Hyuga family. With her around, Hyuga Fujihawk will not have an accident. Uchiha Makoto touched his chin and shook his head. It's not certain. Lee Yi smiled. Don't say that his eldest sister-in-law has one of the best positions in the Hyuga family. Even if her eldest sister-in-law is the patriarch, it is impossible to guarantee the safety of Hyuga Fujihawk. After all, Hyuga Fujihawk is a shame for the Hyuga family. Everyone gets it and kills it. Quote. Uchiha Makoto nodded. You're right. However, before Uchiha Makoto finished speaking, an angry low voice suddenly sounded from behind the two of them. Murderer, wait for me. Even if Lord Hokage protects you, I will definitely find the evidence. Li Yi stopped and turned to look. I was Hyuga's sister-in-law, Hyuga Xiaoling. At this moment, Hyuga Xiaoling was being supported by a maid. Her eyes were fixed on Li Yi like a poisonous snake, and she said in a low voice, sooner or later, I will let you pay the debt with blood. Hey, don't frame good people, okay? Li Yi turned over a Byakugan angrily. Why do I need to kill Hyuga Fujihawk? Or, what is the benefit to me if I kill him? Hyuga Fujihawk's death must have been done by someone from your Hyuga family. They just took this opportunity to put the blame on me and made me a scapegoat. Do you have any brains? Use your brain to think about it, and it is absolutely impossible for me to do this. Haha, slippery tongue. When my brother-in-law is back, only you, she, me, and Lord Hokage know about it. In other words, the death of my brother-in-law must be related to one of the four of us. Hyuga Xiaoling sneered and said, wait, I will find out the evidence. The day I find out the evidence will be the day you will be buried with my brother-in-law. How do you know that your conversation with Lord Hokage wasn't overheard? Li Yi asked back. You and Lord Hokage are indeed powerful, but there are people outside people who are mountains and mountains outside. Do you dare to guarantee 100% that your conversation with Lord Hokage has not been overheard? Besides, Hyuga Fujihawk was a ninja in the land of rain before, and you know Hanzo of the Salamander's temperament. Since Hyuga Fujihawk didn't complete the mission, Hanzo of the Salamander will definitely do anything to prevent Hyuga Fujihawk from leaking secrets. Kill him by means. You also know the strength of Hanzo of the Salamander. If he really wants to kill someone, then we can't guard against it. I just thought about it for a while and thought of these two possibilities, but you still doubt me. Where did your brain grow? Did it grow into a pig's butt? It's hard to think about things at such an age. Can't you use your brain? Li Yi is chattering. Hyuga Xiaoling was speechless. In the end, she shook her hands and said, boy, I have to admit that your Kiba has a sharp mouth, but you can't convince me with just a few words. Hyuga's death is absolutely inextricable from you. Sooner or later, I will find the evidence of this. Li Yi shrugged. Whatever you want. Anyway, I have a clear conscience. After speaking, Li Yi turned around and left. Uchiha Makoto said for Li Yi, Aunt Hyuga, Li Yi is right. He has absolutely no motive to kill Hyuga Fujihawk, you should not doubt him. As soon as these words came out, Li Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. He directly gave Uchiha Makoto a thumbs up in his heart. This girl is a god assist. However, because Li Yi turned his back to the crowd, no one waited until his expression changed. After Uchiha Makoto finished speaking, he also turned around and quickly followed Li Yi. Looking at the back of the two leaving together, Hyuga Xiaoling squinted her eyes slightly, and her slightly cloudy eyes flickered with light, and she was thinking about something. She remained in a standing position for 7 or 8 minutes. Li Yi and Uchiha Makoto are long gone. Hyuga Xiaoling said, Little Chan, help me go back. Yes. Helping Hyuga Xiaoling's maid's head lightly, she turned and left with Hyuga Xiaoling. Uchiha Makoto and Li Yi have left the village. Uchiha Makoto sighed and said, You have been suspected by the Hyuga family, what are you going to do next? The Hyuga family is the top family in our Konoha village, and you are being targeted by them. Better. I believe Hyuga Xiaoling is not a fool. Li Yi shrugged and said nonchalantly. You are so calm. Uchiha Makoto rolled his eyes at Li Yi, but then changed the topic. However, as you said, if you don't do anything wrong, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on the door, so you don't need to be afraid of anything. With Lord Hokage to protect you, even if the Hyuga family is no longer excessive, and will not do outrageous things to you. Quote. Well, the people of the Hyuga family are all smart, not fools. Li Yi nodded. The two said no more. In fact, Li Yi didn't say a word, that is, only a smart person will be smart but be mistaken by smart. If the people of the Hyuga family are all single-minded, then Lao Su is in danger this time. Chapter 143 _ It's getting more and more annoying tilde. Li Yi and Uchiha Makoto came to the training ground. The sun is rising, the sun is just right. Uchiha Makoto said, from today onwards, I will increase the intensity of your training. What kind of addition method? Uchiha Makoto, Li Yi asked. Uchiha Makoto replied, simple, run 80,000 meters within the specified time every day, and do 800 frog leaps within the specified time. Said a lot. Li Yi immediately turned over a Byakugan and asked angrily, are you trying to exhaust me? Uchiha Makoto shook his head. As long as you are not tired, you will be tired from death. Your physique is very malleable, and this amount of exercise will not exhaust you to death. You believe me that much? Li Yi flipped through a Byakugan. If I'm tired, are you responsible? Hearing this question, Uchiha Makoto thought for a while, then nodded seriously. If I really tire you out and have problems, I will take responsibility for you. Hearing this sentence, Li Yi suddenly became interested and asked with a smile, oh. How are you going to be responsible to me? Tell me more specifically. I will support you for the rest of your life, so that you can spend this life in peace. Uchiha Makoto said with a firm expression. Oh, so that's the case, you are going to marry me. Li Yi laughed. Uchiha Makoto's cheek was Yuhi, his expression was a little uncomfortable, and he asked, what are you talking about? Who said that he was going to marry you? If you don't marry me, how will you support me? For training, Li Yi began to take off his clothes and said at the same time, if you marry someone else in the future, how can you support me? Will your husband be willing? You can only support me if you marry me, then you can support me reasonably. Me. You think it's pretty. Uchiha Makoto turned over a good-looking big Byakugan. I don't like you, how can I marry you? You think too much. I'm so handsome, but you don't like me. Li Yi put on a morning expression, and then asked, then who do you like? I don't have a man I like yet. Uchiha Makoto shook his head and said. Really, you're 20 years old, an old woman, you don't even have a man you like. Li Yi raised his brows, pretending to be surprised. Why am I so unbelievable? Uchiha Makoto's forehead burst with blue veins and asked, who are you talking about, an old woman? Ah, I didn't scold you, I just told the truth. A 20-year-old woman, in our Konoha village, is really an old woman. Look at that little girl Ayame, she is only 14 or 15 years old, and she is already sprouting. But you're already 20 years old. Li Yi took off all the clothes that should be taken off, and explained at the same time. I really don't have a man I like. Uchiha Makoto snorted. Hurry up and train. Don't dawdle here. Good. Li Yi hurriedly ran away. Looking at Li Yi's back, Uchiha Makoto's cheeks showed a hint of Yuhi. This guy is getting more and more annoying, tilde. Finally, she snorted softly and looked away. However, not long after Li Yi ran away, a figure suddenly came out of the grass behind Uchiha Makoto. Uchiha Makoto didn't turn his head and asked directly, Yanqiang, what's the matter with you? That's right, the person here is Uchiha Yanqiang. He scratched his head and said, Makoto, I heard that you and Li Yi were attacked yesterday afternoon, is it true? His voice was very small, and he seemed a little guilty. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha Makoto said coldly, Yanqiang, Hyuga Fujihaka is going to attack Li Yi. You already know about this, right? Uchiha Yanqiang's face panicked, and then he shook his head directly, I already know what. I don't know what you are talking about. However, before Uchiha Yangqiang finished speaking, Uchiha Makoto did not turn his head and said coldly, "In this matter, there is no other than me, Li Yi, Lord Hokage, Hyuga Xiaoling, and Hyuga Xiaoling's servant." "The living know, so how do you know?" Uchiha Yangqiang's face turned pale. He thought that Hyuga's sneak attack on Li Yi must have spread. But I didn't expect that Konoha village would block this matter so tightly. Uchiha Yangqiang swallowed a mouthful of saliva and hurriedly said, "Makoto sister, listen to my explanation." "You don't have to explain, I just know you didn't warn us." Uchiha Makoto's voice became extremely cold, and at the same time, she slowly turned around and looked at Uchiha Yangqiang behind him. "Yangqiang, you and Li Yi usually have some minor conflicts and frictions, but, in the face of this foreign enemy, in the face of such an extremely dangerous enemy, you don't even mention a word." "Sister Makoto, things are not what you think, I was also." "Okay, no need to explain." Uchiha Makoto waved his hand and said with a long sigh, "Yangqiang, I am very disappointed in you, very disappointed." Uchiha Yangqiang's face became extremely pale. "Go away, I don't want to see you again." Uchiha Makoto waved his hand again. Uchiha Yangqiang wanted to explain further. However, seeing that Uchiha Makoto had turned around, he had no choice but to hold his hands, and the 5 fingernails of both hands were inserted into the flesh and blood. In the end, she sadly left. Uchiha Makoto let out a long sigh. In fact, she didn't want to do this to Uchiha Yangqiang either. Uchiha Yangqiang is a member of the Uchiha family after all, and he used to have a very good relationship with her. However, at the thought of it, if it wasn't for Li Yi's strength, he would be dead now. Facing such a foreign enemy, why didn't Uchiha Yangqiang remind Li Yi? And now, Li Yi is still suspected by the entire Hyuga family and regarded as a thorn in their side. Uchiha Makoto is disappointed with Uchiha Yangqiang. Li Yi came back after running a lap. He looked at Uchiha Makoto, whose face was a little dark, and asked, "Who made our big beauty angry?" Uchiha Makoto looked up and shook his head, "No. If you are unhappy, just say it." Li Yi patted Uchiha Makoto on the shoulder and said, "Whoever dares to make you unhappy, I will kick him to death with 1 kick. If 1 kick fails, then 2 kicks. PFF tilde." Uchiha Makoto burst out laughing, and the flowers trembled. "What are you laughing at? I'm not kidding you." Li Yi flipped a Byakugan. "Really, whoever dares to upset you, I'll kick him to death." Alright, don't be snarky, hurry up and go to training." Uchiha Makoto pretended to be angry and glared at Li Yi. "Li Yi, run away, immediately." Uchiha Makoto can clearly feel it, and his mood has become more comfortable. Looking at Li Yi's back, Uchiha Makoto touched his heart, his eyes flashed slightly, and he whispered softly, "This guy is getting more and more annoying tilde." Chapter 144 Give her a massage. The time of the day flies by in the blink of an eye. Sunset. Li Yi did not complete today's task. "That's right, undone. Tell me, how do you want to punish me?" Li Yi was lying on the ground, his clothes wet with sweat, and asked out of breath. "Punish you?" Uchiha Makoto blinked, then shook his head. "To be honest, I didn't intend to punish you." "That's fine." Li Yi breathed a sigh of relief. However, Uchiha Makoto added, "But now, I've changed my mind, since you didn't complete the task, then I'm punishing you." "So cruel." Li Yi frowned. "I just followed the advice you gave me." Uchiha Makoto smiled slyly. "Okay." Li Yi did not object. After all, he had to be punished for not completing the task. As the saying goes, born in trouble and die in peace. No matter what you do, create a sense of urgency to get it done. If you don't complete the task, you have to accept the punishment. Uchiha Makoto thought for a moment and said, "Go back and give me a massage." "Massage?" Li Yi was stunned. "What do you mean?" "It's superficial." Uchiha Makoto explained. I've been feeling unwell lately and I want you to give me a massage. You are so precious, you still need a massage. Lee Yi flipped a Byakugan. Hearing this, Uchiha Makoto was very angry. I give you a massage every night, and now I want you to give me a massage, are you still not willing? Who is it? Uchiha Makoto explained in a bad mood. In the Uchiha family, every 3 days, I have to massage every 3 days to clear the meridian blood. Now I can't go back to the family for the time being, so I can only ask you to massage me. Okay, then I'll reluctantly agree to you. However, I haven't studied massage before. Lee Yi said. It's okay, I can teach you. In fact, the massage is very simple, it just stimulates the acupoints, but most of these acupoints are on the back, so I can't reach them, so I can't use force. Uchiha Makoto shook his head and said. You can let the clone give you a massage. Lee Yi said. Clone, no. Uchiha Makoto shook his head, the avatar is too fragile. Once the force is exerted, it will not be able to withstand it. Moreover, during the massage, the chakra in my body will be disturbed, and once the chakra is disturbed, my avatar will also disappear. So it is. Lee Yi nodded. In the original work of Hokage, in order to use Sage Mode for a long time, Uzumaki Naruto left a few clones in Mount Myoboku, so that the clones can absorb natural energy in Mount Myoboku, while his own body is in the real world. When using Sage Mode, you only need to move your mind, and the natural energy collected by the clone will flow into the main body, turning on Sage Mode. However, once the chakra of the main body is disturbed, the clone will disappear. In the original book of Hokage, when Uzumaki Naruto beat Pain, his body was almost occupied by Kyuubi, 9 tails, and the chakra in the body was completely disturbed, so that the clones left on Mount Myoboku disappeared. It is also true now. Uchiha Makoto is disturbed, her avatar disappears. Therefore, using a clone to massage yourself will not work. Uchiha Makoto asked, do you still have the strength to walk? Lee Yi shook his head. Then I'm carrying you. Uchiha Makoto asked. No, I'm sweating too much. Lee Yi shook his head, then asked, you really don't want Uchiha to carry me back? Uchiha Makoto didn't say much, just shook his head. Well, wait for me to rest, I'll go by myself. Lee Yi said. Uchiha Makoto has no objection. 7 or 8 minutes later. Lee Yi regained a bit of strength and was finally able to stand up. He stretched, looked at Uchiha Makoto sitting on a stone in the distance, and asked, let's go. Uchiha Makoto didn't know what she was thinking. At this moment, when she heard Lee Yi's words, she came back to her senses and nodded lightly, okay, let's go. The two left together. On the way back, since the two were not followed, they did not encounter any danger. All was well. Arrive home. I'll go take a shower first. Lee Yi said a word and entered the bathroom to take a shower. However, just as Lee Yi was taking a shower, Uchiha Makoto walked into the bathroom. Lee Yi was taken aback, hurriedly pulled the shower curtain and asked, what are you doing? Don't you pull the shower curtain when you take a shower? Uchiha Makoto covered his eyes and said, of course I'm doing your laundry. So virtuous. Lee Yi stretched out his head and raised his brows. You think I want to wash? Uchiha Makoto asked rhetorically. Then it's hard for you, don't worry, come and don't be indecent. When I give you a massage, I will do my best. Lee Yi patted his chest and assured. Go take a shower, wait for Ayame to come, don't let her see you naked. Having said that, Uchiha Makoto walked out of the bathroom. Lee Yi asked, why can't she be seen? Are you jealous? However, Lee Yi's voice, like a rock sinking into the sea, did not get any reply. Lee Yi shrugged and continued to take a shower. Uchiha Makoto washes Lee Yi's clothes. Her method of washing clothes is very simple, let the clone do it. Pour in the laundry detergent and stir in a bucket with chakra. Bucket, Lee Yi's clothes were spinning at a high speed, and all the sweat and stains on the clothes were thrown off. After washing the clothes, I wring out the clothes and hang them on the balcony. A set of moves. Uchiha Makoto did not do it himself, let the clone do it all. And when the clone dried Lee Yi's clothes on the balcony, its chakra was also used up, and with a bang, it turned into a cloud of white mist, which drifted away with the wind. As for the body of Uchiha Makoto, he has been sitting on the sofa, closing his eyes and resting. Lee Yi walked out of the bathroom and put on a new dress. "Go wash yourself too," he said. "Good." Uchiha Makoto nodded lightly and stood up from the sofa. Lee Yi suddenly asked, "Do you need me to wash your clothes?" "No." Uchiha Makoto shook his head without thinking. "Really not?" Lee determinedly said, "I don't wash the coat, I only wash your intimate clothes, such as times and times. I promise to wash these two clothes clean and without a single stain." Hearing Lee Yi's so impolite words, Uchiha Makoto's cheeks slightly slanted. Yuhi glared at him, and said angrily, "No. Also, don't say such shameless words in the future." "Okay." Lee Yi smiled and shrugged. Humph tilde. Uchiha Makoto let out a delicate hum that she couldn't even admit that her voice could be so delicate, and walked into the bathroom with her arms crossed. Chapter 145-0 Dragon. During the time when Uchiha Makoto was taking a bath, Lee Yi became familiar with Kowloon patriarchy. Lee Yi didn't want to reveal the 9 Dragons dominance technique, so he kept it hidden during today's training. And now, while Uchiha Makoto was taking a bath, Lee Yi just happened to take a closer look. "System, what is the use of the 9 Dragons hegemony art?" Lee Yi asked in his heart. The crisp voice of the system immediately resounded in Lee Yi's mind. "Back to the host, the Kowloon dominant body art has always been a peerless physical exercise. Invincible, can be called invincible. Strong." Lee Yi raised his eyebrows. "How many dragons am I now?" "1 dragon." While speaking, Lee Yi opened the system panel. At the same time, the crisp voice of the system sounded again. "Go back to the host is now 0 dragon, not Yilong." "Then how can I cultivate Yilong? Besides, since I am not Yilong, why can I release Yilong?" Lee Yi asked. System replied, "Back to the host, if you want to cultivate to the realm of a dragon, there is only one way, and that is to follow the Kowloon hegemony art. Endurance, or you will surely die." Quote. As for why the host was able to release a dragon, it was because of pity. Pity. Lee Yi's mouth twitched. "In other words, you pity me, so you gave me a dragon." System replied, "Go back to the host, that's right. Come out for me, do you think I can't kill you?" Lee Yi was so angry that he flipped Byakugan. System replied, "Back to the host, the system has no entity and cannot appear in front of you." Lee Yi's heart is full of anger. Then why does the 9 Dragons hegemony art protect me when someone sneaks up on me? Could it be that it is not under my control and has its own consciousness? Lee Yi frowned again and asked. System replied, "Back to the host, the 9 Dragons hegemony art does not have self-consciousness. The 9 Dragons hegemony art protects you because it is triggered passively." "What is passive triggering?" Lee Yi blinked and asked. System replied, "The so-called passive trigger means that when the host is in danger, the 9 Dragons hegemony technique can be passively released to protect the host." "So it is." Lee Yi nodded, and then asked again, "Then am I invincible now? No matter who attacked me, 9 Dragon Master Body Art can protect me." System replied, "Go back to the host." No. With the host's current physical strength, he can only passively trigger 3 to 5 times a day. After 3 to 5 times, the host's physical strength will bottom out, and it can no longer be passively released. "So it is." Lee Yi nodded, and then asked again, "Although I am only a 0 dragon now, I have a dragon. That is to say, it is actually very easy for me to cultivate to the realm of a dragon, right?" "Go back to the host, that's right." System replied, as long as the host follows the cultivation method of the 9 dragons' dominant body art, and luckily cultivates for 1 night, that's all it takes. 1 night, yes. Li Yi nodded. Just then, the bathroom door was opened, and Uchiha Makoto came out. Li Yi closed the system page. Uchiha Makoto asked, "Is that girl Ayame not here yet?" "Not coming." Li Yi shook his head. "What? Do you really take someone as your nanny?" "Not at all." Uchiha Makoto shook his head. "I'm just more used to eating the dinner she made." "She didn't come tonight. Did she have any trouble? Could it be that the guy from Lexus is harassing her again?" And, Uchiha Makoto's tone was obviously serious. Li Yi smiled and shook his head, and said leisurely, "Don't worry, that kid won't harass Ayame now." "Why are you so confident?" Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly and asked. "A man's sixth sense." Li Yi pointed to his head and smiled. Uchiha Makoto flipped a good-looking Byakugan. She doesn't quite believe in such inexplicable things as the sixth sense. Even if she does, she only believes in the sixth sense of women, not the sixth sense of men. What sixth sense can a man have? However, Uchiha Makoto didn't ask any more, because she knew that Li Yi must be confident in saying so. During this period of time, Uchiha Makoto knew that Li Yi is a very reliable man. Whether he is doing things or speaking, he is very sure. Li Yi is a man who can give people a sense of security. Since he said that Lexus will not harass Ayame now, there is no need to worry. "If that's the case, then let me cook for you," Uchiha Makoto asked. "Forget it, let me do it." Li Yi shook his head and sat up from the sofa. "Well, I'll give you the punishment for not completing your training mission today." Uchiha Makoto smiled sweetly. "Then don't I have to accept 2 punishments?" Li Yi immediately protested. "I object. This is so unfair." "Objection is void," Uchiha Makoto said domineeringly. "Okay." Li Yi sighed lightly, turned and walked into the kitchen. Uchiha Makoto stretched and sat on the sofa with his eyes closed. Meanwhile, in the kitchen. Bang bang bang. Li Yi cuts vegetables with a knife. When he was on Earth, Li Yi was very good at cooking, and there was only one reason for him to learn to cook: to pick up girls. As the saying goes, the less things are, the rarer they are. Most of the men on Earth don't know how to cook. They follow the concept of, kunzi is far away from cooking. Not to mention cooking, they don't even cut vegetables. And Li Yi did the opposite. What is kunzi yuan cooking? I don't follow this concept. I want to cook, and I want to be a man who can cook. Because of this, Li Yi is very popular among the large group of women. With the skill of cooking, Li Yi has captured the hearts of at least 13 women. At least. Therefore, Li Yi's cooking skills are not ordinary. It is precisely because Li Yi is very good at cooking, so while cooking, he does 2 things and communicates with the system. System, the black-robed man who attacked me last night should have been transferred to Lexus, as I guessed, right? Li Yi asked in his heart. System replied, back to the host, the system doesn't know. Then it must be him. I didn't offend anyone but him. Li Yi squinted his eyes and said in his heart, the 9 dragons domination art, just taught him a lesson. In a short period of time, he would be so afraid of me that he would not dare to attack Ayame. Tisk tisk, the 9 dragons domination art, it's really a good practice. Chapter 146_track. Li Yi made 3 dishes and 1 soup. At the dinner table, Uchiha Makoto was eating Li Yi's fruit. His eyes lit up, and he praised, I didn't expect your cooking skills to be so good. Routine operation only. Li Yi smiled proudly. Who did you learn cooking from? Not Ayame. Uchiha Makoto asked. No. Li Yi shook his head. Sure enough. Uchiha Makoto tapped. The dishes you cook with Ayame are 2 different flavors, which are related to the cooking heat, time, frequency, etc. The cooking skills of the 2 of you are not away. It seems that you still know a lot about cooking. Li Yi smiled. That's right, I've been learning to cook lately. Uchiha Makoto patted chest triumphantly. In fact, Li Yi still didn't say a word. What he made was really unpalatable. By the way, why isn't that girl Ayame here yet? Uchiha Makoto took a sip of the soup and asked. Maybe something happened. Li Yi said. Don't worry about her. You have such a big heart. Uchiha Makoto flipped a Byakugan. I don't call it big-hearted, I call it self-confidence. Li Yi shook his head and smiled. Ayame said she wasn't coming tonight. Uchiha Makoto was still a little uneasy, so he asked. I didn't say it. Li Yi shook his head. Then she won't come today, it's abnormal. Uchiha Makoto frowned. If something goes wrong, there must be a demon. I think we still need to find her. Let's talk after dinner, she should be fine. Li Yi shook his head and said. Uchiha Makoto doesn't know why Li Yi's heart is so big. You know, in the past, Li Yi might have gone out to find Ayame. But now, can Li Yi be so calm? What is the reason? Did Li Yi break up with Ayame? In fact, to be honest, Li Yi is a little worried about Ayame now. A little. Although Lexus will not attack Ayame in a short time, who knows if Ayame will provoke other people. Of course, the probability of this kind of thing is very small, almost negligible, so Li Yi is not too worried. But if Ayame doesn't come, then Li Yi has to go and see. After all, this kind of thing, it is better to believe it is, not to believe it is not. The two continued to eat. After half an hour, the two finished eating. Uchiha Makoto volunteered, I'll go wash the dishes. Then I'll go out. Li Yi stretched and stood up from the stool. Okay, make sure that Ayame is not in danger. You will come back immediately, the village has not been peaceful recently. Uchiha Makoto reminded. Not quite. What's the reason? Li Yi blinked. I'm not too sure. I heard that we are going to sign a contract with the Land of Water. Uchiha Makoto replied, in a delicate voice. The Land of Water. The pact. Li Yi frowned. At this juncture, sign an agreement with the Land of Water. It's so abnormal. Sarutobi Hiruzen already knew that the country that attacked Konoha village was not the country of thunder, but the country of water. That is, the Land of Water killed nearly 20 lives in the village of Konoha. This hatred is inseparable. But he even signed an agreement with the Land of Water. Why? What is the purpose of Sarutobi Hiruzen? Li Yi couldn't figure it out. However, Li Yi didn't think much of it. After all, with his current strength and status, he still can't get in touch with these high-level things. However, as Uchiha Makoto said, Konoha village is not so peaceful recently, I'm afraid. Well, I see. Li Yi nodded and stopped grumbling, then I'll go out. Be safe. Uchiha Makoto reminded politely. Li Yi leaves the house. Walking on the street lights are not bright, and some street lights are still flashing, with the surrounding cold wind, giving people a very gloomy feeling. Could it be that the Water Kingdom will continue to attack Konoha village, and Ayame just happened to be caught by them? Walking on the road, Li Yi frowned slightly and thought to himself. Thinking about it, Li Yi came to the door of Ayame's house. Knock on the door. Boom. Who is it? Ichiraku's voice came. I, Li Yi. Li Yi replied. Ichiraku opened the door, saw Li Yi, and asked with a kind smile, so it's Li Yi, what's the matter so late? I'm coming to see Ayame. Is Ayame at home? Li Yi asked. At home. Ichiraku nodded, but then said, but she's not feeling well today. She's sleeping now, so I'm afraid I won't be able to see you. It's okay, I'm just asking. Li Yi shook his head and said, if that's the case, then, Uncle Ichiraku, I won't disturb your rest. Why don't you come in for a cup of tea? Ichiraku opened the door. No, I won't bother you so late. Li Yi shook his head and turned to leave. Ichiraku did not hold back and watched Li Yi leave. On the way, Li Yi squinted his eyes and thought, uncomfortable. Could it be a cold? Ayame is not suitable for the ninja way, so she does not have the strong body of ninjas. For her, it is very common for her to have a cold and a fever. Li Yi returned the same way. Along the way, Li Yi always felt that someone was following him. He stopped and turned his head to look behind, only to find that there was no one behind him. Is it my delusion? Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking. However, even so, Li Yi still asked the system in his heart, "System, is there anyone following me?" System replied, "Back to the host, there is no one within 10 meters. What about 10 meters away?" Li Yi asked. System replied, "Back to the host, the system cannot detect the place 10 meters away. What's the use of you?" Li Yi flipped a Byakugan, and then ordered in his heart, "Then pay attention to any disturbance within 10 meters. If someone enters within 10 meters, immediately alert me." System replied, "Go back to the host, the system has received it." At this moment, in front of Li Yi, a woman walked towards him with her child in her arms. Away from Li Yi, the system's voice immediately sounded, "Go back to the host, in front of you, a woman with a baby entered within 10 meters. According to the system, the risk index of a woman is 1, and the risk index of a baby is 1. 0.1. Danger index. 0 is the beginning, 10 is the extreme." Li Yi was speechless. "System, I can see this woman, you don't need to remind me." However, Li Yi didn't say much. After all, with the system in place, he felt at ease. "Keep walking. All the way safe and sound. It seems that I am indeed suspicious." Li Yi nodded secretly. However, just as he was about to get to the door, the clear voice of the system suddenly sounded in his mind. "Go back to the host, behind you, a man has entered within 10 meters. According to the system, the danger index of a man is 8. Chapter 147 _ This is not cowardice." Li Yi's mind without warning. Li Yi frowned, without any hesitation, he turned his head to look. However, there is no one behind you. Li Yi immediately locked his gaze on a wall. If, as the system said, someone broke into the range of 10 meters, then this person is hiding behind the wall. Home is at the front, enemies at the back. What to do? Li Yi made a decisive decision and shouted loudly, "Makoto! Come out! Rescue soldiers!" Li Yi doesn't know the strength of the other party, so she wants to move out of Uchiha Makoto. Uchiha Makoto's strength is not too strong, her background is not ordinary. After all, her father is the head of the Uchiha clan. With this kind of support, let alone in Konoha village, even in the entire ninja world, how many people dare to touch her? Li Yi, this is not called cowardice, this is called resourcefulness. Knowing oneself and knowing the enemy can help you win 100 battles. Now Li Yi is in the light and the opponent is in the dark. Li Yi does not know the real identity of the opponent, so he will never act rashly. Hearing Li Yi's voice, Uchiha Makoto immediately walked out of the house and asked, "Li Yi, what's wrong?" "Someone is following me." Li Yi lowered his voice and shouted, "If I guessed correctly, that person is behind that wall." Hearing this, Uchiha Makoto didn't hesitate at all, blood flashed in his eyes, and Sharingan suddenly turned on. At the same time, Uchiha Makoto's body is like an arrow, rushing directly towards that wall. Li Yi was worried about Uchiha Makoto's accident, so he followed behind Uchiha Makoto to protect her at all times. However, to the surprise of both of them, there was no one behind that wall. Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly, looked at Li Yi and asked, "What's going on?" "Run away." Li Yi replied. The system's voice also sounded in Li Yi's mind, "Go back to the host. That person has left 10 meters away. Are you sure you're not paranoid?" Uchiha Makoto asked. "Okay." Li Yi nodded. "There is indeed someone following me, but he runs very fast." Uchiha Makoto believed Lee Yi and asked lightly, should we chase? Don't chase after poor thieves. Lee Yi shook his head. What has been done must be done again, and what has been done must be done again. Since he followed me this time, it means that he will still follow me next time. We can just wait and see. Is it a late striker? Uchiha Makoto narrowed his eyes slightly, then asked, would you like to call someone to protect us? Actually, Uchiha Makoto is more careful than Lee Yi. Now that the village is not very peaceful, Uchiha Makoto is worried that Lee Yi will be in danger, so she wants to invite several experts from the clan to be bodyguards. Lee Yi shook his head. No. Uchiha Makoto did not speak. Go home. Speaking, Lee Yi brought Uchiha Makoto back home together. And in the distance, in the dark night, a pair of green eyes are staring at Lee Yi's house at the moment, and there is a dangerous light in the eyes. When he got home, the first thing Uchiha Makoto did was to set up the enchantment. The walls, doors, and windows were all covered with spells. And Uchiha Makoto arranged a 3-layered barrier. In this way, once someone breaks in, then we can find out at the first time. Uchiha Makoto said with a satisfied smile. Lee Yi did not find it cumbersome, but nodded in agreement. Nowadays, the village is not very peaceful, and everyone is in danger, so it is better to be conservative. Tonight, practice your abilities first. Uchiha Makoto said. For the first 3 days, it was from the living room to the bedroom. At this distance, you are basically a master. In your prime, you can open the door in just 1 second. Lee Yi nodded. In the first 3 days, his physical strength had skyrocketed, so he opened the door at a very fast rate. Uchiha Makoto continued. And tonight, we practice the distance from the kitchen to the bedroom. From the kitchen to the bedroom, about 15 meters, which is twice the distance before. Well, good. Lee Yi nodded in agreement. So, under the supervision of Uchiha Makoto, Lee Yi began to practice. Because Lee Yi's physical strength has recovered a little or two, the first time he opened the door, Lee Yi only needed more than 2 seconds before his body fell into the door. 5 seconds later, he went from the kitchen to the bedroom out of thin air. Immediately, a thin layer of sweat appeared on Lee Yi's forehead. Obviously, the devil fruit was using up his physical strength in an instant, and the recoil was quite strong. Uchiha Makoto recorded the time and said, "Go ahead." Lee Yi once again activated the power of the devil fruit and came from the bedroom to the kitchen. 18 times in a row, Lee Yi fell to the ground, panting and sweating profusely. Fortunately, when Lee Yi practiced, he only wore 1 kue on the whole body, so when washing clothes, he only needed to wash this kue. "Have you reached the limit?" Uchiha Makoto asked. Lee Yi didn't even have the strength to nod, so he replied feebly, "Well, if I use the ability again, I'm afraid I will faint on the spot." Hearing this, Uchiha Makoto nodded, then stopped practicing. If it was the first 3 days, Uchiha Makoto would definitely let Lee Yi do his best to use his ability once again. However, today is different. Lee Yi still has a task and can't sleep yet. Lee Yi lay on the floor. After 10 minutes, Lee Yi was about to fall asleep when Uchiha Makoto lightly stepped on his foot and said, "Get up, go take a shower." Lee Yi's stamina had recovered by 1 or 2%, he nodded, put his hands on the floor, and stood up with difficulty. After taking a shower, Lee Yi's physical strength has recovered to 23%, but because of this, Lee Yi is extremely tired now and can fall asleep standing up. Uchiha Makoto threw a pill to Lee Yi and said, "Take it." Lee Yi didn't ask much, just swallowed it. If it was before, Lee Yi would definitely inquire about the effect of this pill in detail. However, that's because of not believing in Uchiha Makoto. People change. At least, for now, Lee Yi believes in Uchiha Makoto. Seeing that Lee Yi didn't even ask any questions, he just swallowed the pill in 1 gulp, and a warm current suddenly rose in Uchiha Makoto's heart. Sit and wait for the drug to kick in. Uchiha Makoto pointed to the sofa opposite. Lee Yi nodded and sat opposite Uchiha Makoto. After 3 or 4 minutes, the power of the drug starts to kick in. Lee Yi only felt that his whole body was suddenly full of energy, and his eyes were bright and refreshed. Are you drugged me? Lee Yi narrowed his eyes slightly and asked directly. From extremely tired to extremely refreshing, this is the reaction after taking drugs. This is a new pill developed by the Ministry of Health. After taking it, it can temporarily restore physical strength. In fact, the principle is very simple. Forcibly activating cells and forcibly promoting metabolism is equivalent to using future physical strength. Uchiha Makoto explained that the voice is soft and refreshing. Chapter 148-Same bed. Hearing Uchiha Makoto's explanation, Lee Yi turned over a Byakugan and said angrily, "Isn't this just taking drugs? What's a drug addiction?" Uchiha Makoto obviously did not understand the meaning of the word, drugs. Nothing. Lee Yi did not intend to explain, but asked, "How long will the effect of this medicine last?" "With your physique, it can last about 20 minutes. Uchiha Makoto touched his chin and said. "Then what am I going to do in 20 minutes? Lee Yi asked. "Follow me." After that, Uchiha Makoto took Lee Yi and walked into the bedroom. In the bedroom, Uchiha Makoto turned his back to Lee Yi, took off his clothes, and lay down on the bed. So, her smooth and white back was completely exposed to Lee Yi's field of vision. Lee Yi looked up and down and said in an appreciative tone, "The skin is very good and smooth." Uchiha Makoto's cheek slightly slanted. "Yuhi, don't say these useless words. Next, do as I say, you can press wherever I tell you, understand?" "Understood." Lee Yi nodded, but the next moment he asked, "Don't you rub oil?" "What rubbing oil?" Uchiha Makoto was slightly taken aback. "It's lubrication." Lee Yi explained, "If I don't rub the oil, my fingers will rub against your skin and it will damage your skin." "So it is." Uchiha Makoto nodded and said, "I don't have that oil, but I have the medicine from the medical department." After speaking, Uchiha Makoto threw a bottle to Lee Yi. It was filled with a light blue potion. "Drop this bottle of potion on my back 3 times. Uchiha Makoto explained, "It's the first time, let's get started." Lee Yi nodded, "No more ink," and poured 1/3 of the amount on Uchiha Makoto's back. Because the potion was very cold, when the potion was poured on his back, Uchiha Makoto's body trembled slightly, and the muscles in his back tightened. Lee Yi comforted, "Relax, don't be nervous." "I'm not nervous, Tilda." Uchiha Makoto's cheeks are slightly yuhi, and his voice is extremely delicate. Lee Yi rubbed his hands together, then spread the potion evenly with his hands. As soon as she touched Uchiha Makoto's skin, she was obviously very tense, and the muscles in her back were tensed up and very stiff. However, Lee Yi's technique is very gentle and the speed is also very soft, so gradually, Uchiha Makoto instinctively relaxed his vigilance, and the muscles in his back gradually relaxed. Seeing that the time was right, Lee Yi asked, "Which acupuncture point should I press first?" "First press the Tianjinchiriki column point on the back of the neck, then press the shoulder and neck point, and finally press down in order. Press the Dazhui point, Fengmen point, Fufan point, Feishu point, Sanjiaoshu point between the 2 backbones." Uchiha Makoto talked eloquently. "Got it." After listening, Lee Yi nodded and started to massage. Perhaps because of that pill, Lee Yi's strength became very strong. Just as he massaged the Tianjinchiriki column point, Uchiha Makoto's body trembled, and a coquettish exclamation came out of his mouth, "Ah tilde. Too much power." Lee Yi asked. "No, the strength is just right," Uchiha Makoto said. Lee Yi flipped through a Byakugan and thought to himself, "What's your name?" However, Lee Yi didn't say much, but continued to massage. A minute later, Uchiha Makoto said, "Next point." Lee Yi began to massage the shoulder and neck points. This time, Uchiha Makoto seems to have adapted to Lee Yi's strength, from beginning to end, calm and composed. A minute later, Uchiha Makoto said, "Next point." Lee Yi began to massage the dojue point. The dojue point is between the two backbones. Lee Yi gang exerted force. Uchiha Makoto's delicate body suddenly slammed. However, she still said in a trembling voice, "Press first, then turn, and finally knead." Lee Yi did as he did. Next, there are Fengman Point, Fufen Point, Feishu Point, Cream Blind Point, Shinshu Point, Hunman Point, Pishu Point. Uchiha Makoto's reaction is growing. Ticklish person, so the more Lee Yi goes down, the more she can't stand it, and she's groaning in her mouth. Fortunately, there is no one around, otherwise, others may misunderstand. Finally, Lee Yi pressed his waist. Without the slightest reminder, Lee Yi pressed the button immediately. 180 words are omitted here. After a minute, the Shenshu acupoint was finally pressed. Uchiha Makoto was lying on the bed, dying. In her beautiful eyes, the rays of light flowed, her expression was blurred, and a layer of fine sweat appeared on her forehead, and her expression was quite charming. However, Lee Yi couldn't see her expression. And, Lee Yi stood behind Uchiha Makoto and finished pressing the acupuncture points at the tailbone. Uchiha Makoto said weakly, "Next, from the neck to the tailbone, use the protrusions of both fists to slide and press." Okay. Lee Yi nodded, clenched his fists with both hands, and used the protrusions on the surface of his fists to slowly slide down from the beautiful snow-white jade neck. Because these acupoints are symmetrical, Lee Yi wants to use both fists together. Uchiha Makoto urged, "Hurry up." Lee Yi accelerated with his fists and slid down quickly. Uchiha Makoto was lying on the bed, with a low moan from his mouth. Slide up again. Uchiha Makoto reminder. Lee Yi's fists slid up quickly. So, next, Lee Yi repeated these two actions. Slide down, slide up. In Uchiha Makoto's mouth, a low groan continued. Lee Yi repeated this action, going back and forth 9 times to 98 times. Finally, 2 straight lines of fresh yuhi appeared on Uchiha Makoto's fair and smooth beauty back. Uchiha Makoto gasped and said, "Next, pour the potion, and then repeat the previous action. But the force is lighter than before. Press it twice." "Good." Lee Yi nodded and sprinkled a third of the potion on her beautiful back. This time, Lee Yi's strength was obviously much smaller than before. Uchiha Makoto gradually adapts, and the reaction is not as strong as before. The third time, Lee Yi used less power than the second time. Because it was so comfortable, Uchiha Makoto fell asleep. In the end, the medicine bottle was empty, and the third massage was over. Woo tilde. Lee Yi let out a sigh of relief. Down, I found that Uchiha Makoto was already asleep, and sleeping soundly. Lee Yi found a towel and wiped off the potion residue on her back. Then, he turned Uchiha Makoto's body over. That's right, flip over. So, great, scenery, all exposed. Lee Yi did not appreciate it too much, but covered her with a quilt. Lee Yi wanted to leave. However, Uchiha Makoto suddenly grabbed his wrist. Lee Yi thought Uchiha Makoto was awake, but she was sleeping soundly. Where did she wake up? Lee Yi wanted to pull her little hand away. However, suddenly, a feeling of extreme exhaustion erupted in my mind. Boom. Lee Yi came back to his senses, his eyes went black, he lost consciousness, and his body fell on the bed involuntarily. That's right, bed with a beauty. Chapter 149_very experienced. The next day, early in the morning, Uchiha Makoto woke up in a daze. She only felt that she had a very comfortable sleep. Is it because of the massage? Opening his eyes, Uchiha Makoto thought so. However, she had some doubts. Because, she used to do massages often, but it was never as comfortable as last night. And more importantly, Li Yi's technique is not proficient. Therefore, it stands to reason that the quality of her sleep last night should not be as good as before. However, facts speak louder than words. The quality of her sleep last night was the best in her nearly 20 years of life. No exaggeration at all. Uchiha Makoto wondered why. However, just as she was about to open her eyes, she suddenly trembled, as if she had noticed something, and then her body suddenly stiffened. Because she seems to be lying in someone's arms now. Do not get rid of the word, seems. She is really lying in someone's arms now. Uchiha Makoto opened his eyes suddenly, sat up from the bed suddenly, grabbed the quilt and covered his upper body. Li Yi felt that the quilt was taken away from him, opened his eyes in a daze, and asked, "What's wrong? Is there an enemy attack? You, how are you in my bed?" Uchiha Makoto stared at her beautiful eyes and stammered and asked. Li Yi blinked, then sat up, rubbed his eyes, and asked weakly, "Yes. Why am I in your bed? You still ask me. I fell asleep last night." Uchiha Makoto almost cried. Li Yi was very calm. He sat naked on the bed, yawned and said, "Oh, I remembered. Last night, after I massaged you, I suddenly lost my strength, probably because the medicine had worn off. And then I fell asleep. I thought I hit you and you woke up, but I didn't expect you to sleep so soundly." Li Yi's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something as common as eating. Uchiha Makoto's dying heart is about to have it. She's a very traditional woman, and she hasn't slept in the same bed with any man since she can remember. Including her father. However, her first time was inexplicably given to the man in front of her. And more importantly, this man doesn't seem to take it seriously at all. Doesn't he know how important this matter is to me? Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto's body froze again. Because she found out that her pants were also taken off. That's right. Now Uchiha Makoto is a naked man. But she clearly remembered that when she fell asleep last night, she was still wearing pants. Why was it taken off? However, now is not the time to think about this. Uchiha Makoto hurriedly grabbed the quilt and covered his whole body with the quilt. However, because of this, Li Yi had no quilt on his body, and his lower body was exposed. Li Yi is also a naked man. Therefore, Li Yi's landscape is all exposed in Uchiha Makoto's field of vision. Yeah. Uchiha Makoto let out a coquettish cry, hurriedly covered his eyes with the quilt, and said, "Get out. Get out." Okay. Li Yi was calm from beginning to end, nodded, stood up from the bed, and walked out of the room slowly with a yawn. Uchiha Makoto lifted the quilt and took a peek at Li Yi's ass. Yuhi on the cheek, hurriedly used the quilt to block his view again. With a soft bang, the door was closed. The bedroom, Uchiha Makoto was the only one left. Uchiha Makoto threw the quilt directly on the ground, then stood up and started looking for blood on the bed. She is a chick. If something really happened to her and Li Yi last night, then there must be blood on the bed. However, Uchiha Makoto searched everywhere, including under the pillow, and found no trace of blood. Not to mention blood stains, there is no sign even after the liquid has dried up. In other words, she didn't have anything with Li Yi at all last night. Uchiha Makoto breathed a sigh of relief. It's okay. It's okay. Scare me. Uchiha Makoto patted chest with a very happy expression. However, for some unknown reason, Uchiha Makoto's heart suddenly felt a sense of loss. Uchiha Makoto herself didn't know where the loss came from, and she didn't think much about it, but picked up the quilt and put on her clothes. When she walked out of the bedroom, she found that Li Yi fell asleep again on the sofa. Uchiha Makoto suddenly became annoyed, ran forward, sat on Li Yi's body, and asked, "Come on. What happened last night?" Uchiha Makoto's weight is not heavy, the impact is very strong. Sitting on Li Yi's lower abdomen, he directly turned Li Yi into a lobster, and his eyes almost popped out. Li Yi said helplessly, "Auntie, I'm sleeping, can you relax? Answer me, what the hell happened last night? Uchiha Makoto asked angrily. What else can happen? That's it. Didn't I say it before? Lee Yi waved his hand and replied. Uchiha Makoto sat on top of Lee Yi and asked, I didn't say that. Then what did you say? Lee Yi asked with drooping eyes. Uchiha Makoto cheeked Yuhi, hesitantly, and finally plucked up the courage to say, I ask you, why is my underwear not on my body? When I fell asleep last night, I was clearly wearing underwear. Oh, this matter, I should have taken it off for you. Lee Yi said with a yawn. However, Lee Yi hasn't finished speaking yet. Crack. Uchiha Makoto directly slapped Lee Yi. Show no mercy. In an instant, a bloody palm print appeared on Lee Yi's face. Lee Yi instantly woke up and opened his eyes. But seeing Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes overflowing with tears, he covered his small mouth with an extremely aggrieved expression. How could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? She cried. Cry so movingly. I cried so miserably. Lee Yi flipped over a Byakugan and said angrily, Don't worry, when I took off your XX, I definitely didn't have any consciousness. Everything was my instinctive consciousness after I fell asleep. Huh. Uchiha Makoto stopped crying for a moment, and blinked her beautiful eyes. Really? Really? Lee Yi reluctantly explained. You also know that I like to sleep with Luo, but I don't like to be bound on my body, and as my bedmate, I don't want you to have any restraints on your body, so the subconscious dominates my body and you. Quote. Uchiha Makoto breathed a sigh of relief. I see. Scare me. I thought I was XX by this guy. However, the next moment, Uchiha Makoto frowned again, stared at Lee Yi, bit Kiba and asked with a sneer, Okay. Even this habit has been cultivated. It seems that you are very experienced. Chapter 150_Why the Change in Temperament. When he was on Earth, Lee Yi was a proper scumbag. In the 28 or 9 years he was alive, he had played with 70 or 80 women and had sex with these women thousands of times. It is precisely because of this that Lee Yi has developed this habit. He didn't like the restraints on his body when he slept. Moreover, he didn't want his bedmate to have any restraints on his body. Even when he is sleeping, his subconscious will attack, thereby controlling his body, so that the female partners. I have to say, Lee Yi is a scumbag king. Of course, this was the time on Earth, because Lee Yi was a rich second generation, not short of money, so there were so many women. After all, back then, money was king. However, in this world, strength is king. Fist hard is the last word. So, Lee Yi doesn't plan to touch women now. When you have absolute strength, it will not be too late to touch women again. Lee Yi is very self-aware. He knows that with his current strength, the women he can have are just a bunch of crooked melons and cracked dates. Uchiha Makoto is really beautiful, but even if Uchiha Makoto wants to be with him, they can't get together in the end. After all, the identity gap between the two is too great. However, once Lee Yi has absolute strength, then, let alone Uchiha Makoto, even conquering all the women of the Uchiha clan is no problem. Absolute strength is the absolute truth. Everything else is bullshit. Because of this, even in the face of a beauty like Uchiha Makoto, Lee Yi is calm and calm. Lee Yi is a very goal-oriented person, and he will never be distracted to do other things until he achieves his goal. Looks like you're very experienced. Uchiha Makoto said with a sneer, gnashing Kiba. It's all right. Lee Yi shrugged and said indifferently, however, at least I'm still a baby now. And, do you think I'll believe your bullshit? Uchiha Makoto bit Kiba and sneered, you even call this habit an X. This kind of habit can't be cultivated by just 1 or 2 women. Lee Yi wanted to explain. But suddenly, Lee Yi felt that he didn't need to explain to Uchiha Makoto. She is neither her girlfriend nor her sister, why should she explain it to her? She can only be regarded as half of her master at most. Just a master. What qualifications do you have to take care of your own private life? Therefore, Lee Yi said directly, do you believe it or not? Uchiha Makoto suddenly burst out of anger. What an attitude. However, right after that, Uchiha Makoto's heart was filled with disappointment. She always thought that Lee Yi was still a pure body. But she never imagined that Lee Yi would be so experienced. To be honest, Uchiha Makoto is disappointed in Lee Yi. The next moment, Uchiha Makoto's face suddenly became cold, and he said coldly, I don't care what kind of person you are. I don't care, my purpose is only one, that is to make you stronger, in return your kindness to me. Lee Yi nodded lightly. I want you to forget everything about last night. Uchiha Makoto said coldly. What happened last night? Lee Yi blinked. Well, fine. Uchiha Makoto nodded and turned away. Lee Yi blinked again. He really doesn't remember at all what happened last night. However, since Uchiha Makoto doesn't ask more about this matter, Lee Yi will not raise any pot without opening it. I'm going to buy food and cook, you can sleep a little longer. Having said that, Uchiha Makoto walked out of the house. The door was closed, Lee Yi stretched and continued to fall asleep. Last night, Uchiha Makoto slept soundly and sleep efficiency is very high, so even now it is just dawn, she is very refreshing and full of energy. However, Lee Yi is different. Lee Yi was already very tired last night, and he even took the pills that exhausted his physical strength, which made him even more exhausted. More, Uchiha Makoto didn't give him a massage yesterday. Therefore, he only feels uncomfortable all over his body, and it hurts everywhere, and now he just wants to sleep and rest. Uchiha Makoto grocery shopping, chopping, cooking, serving. In the end, she patted Lee Yi's face lightly, woke him up, and said, get up and eat. I'll sleep again. Lee Yi turned over. However, Uchiha Makoto was violent and threw the quilt on Lee Yi directly. So, Lee Yi turned into a naked guy again. What are you doing? Lee Yi sat up helplessly, while subconsciously blocking a part of himself. Uchiha Makoto half smiled, and said, what are you doing? I'm not too shy, you are a big man, why are you shy? It's not shyness, it's basic human etiquette. Lee Yi shook his head, explaining this. Well, anyway, I've already seen these things. Uchiha Makoto didn't care, but carefully looked Lee Yi. Lee Yi raised his brows and suddenly sobered up. How did she suddenly become so generous? Aren't you very shy before? What happened? Feeling changed. How long have I slept? Driven by curiosity, Lee Yi asked. In less than an hour. Uchiha Makoto folded the quilt and placed it next to Lee Yi while answering. Lee Yi frowned and said, I thought I slept for 3 or 4 years. What are you thinking? How could it be 3 or 4 years? Uchiha Makoto flipped a Byakugan. Lee Yi wanted to say, then why did your temperament change so much? However, Lee Yi did not ask, but put on the clothes that Uchiha Makoto handed over. Go wash up quickly. After washing up, the dishes will be warm. Uchiha Makoto urged softly, like a gentle wife. Lee Yi walked into the bathroom. The meal, Uchiha Makoto has been serving Lee Yi with food. Lee Yi didn't know why. Uchiha Makoto. Why are you so gentle all of a sudden? Wasn't it still cold before? Besides, didn't she just think that I was a scumbag with countless experiences, so she planned to fight me? But how could she be so gentle all of a sudden? What the hell is going on? Does she have some conspiracy? Thinking of this, Lee Yi stared at Uchiha Makoto with suspicious eyes. Look what I'm doing, hurry up and eat. No, fool, I made it for you myself Tilda. Uchiha Makoto turned over a good-looking Byakugan at Lee Yi, then used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat and handed it to Lee Yi's mouth. Lee Yi was stunned. What is this operation? However, Lee Yi did not dislike Uchiha Makoto, but cautiously ate the piece of meat without touching the chopsticks with his mouth. Then, Li Yi pinched his thigh hard. Hiss. What a fucking pain. This is not a dream. The fuck is real? Chapter 151_guess. Li Yi stared at Uchiha Makoto suspiciously. He didn't know why Uchiha Makoto had such a change. Is it someone else's fake? So, Li Yi asked the system in his heart. System, is this Uchiha Makoto in front of you real or fake? Go back to the host, she is real. The crisp sound of the system immediately sounded in Li Yi's mind. That's weird. Li Yi fell into deep thought. It stands to reason that the current Uchiha Makoto should hate himself extremely. Even if you don't hate yourself, you should be very cold to yourself, just like before. But now, she is very gentle to herself. To be precise, extremely gentle. Li Yi couldn't understand why Uchiha Makoto had such a change. Suddenly, Li Yi's eyes lit up, as if he had thought of something, and said in his heart, I remember that in the original book of Hokage, Uchiha Makoto was a very gentle woman, gentle and elegant, and she was very suitable for being a wife. However, in this world, she is a very cold woman. I used to think that it was because I came through and caused the butterfly effect, which led to her change, but now it seems that this is not the case. In Li Yi's heart, a bold guess came up. That is, the nature of Uchiha Makoto is gentle, considerate, generous and kind. However, what she showed in front of outsiders was a cold look. As for why she showed such a cold appearance, Li Yi had no idea. As for why she is showing her true nature now, Li Yi is also unknown. However, what she shows now is her true nature. Eat more, you have the strength to continue training. Uchiha Makoto kept adding vegetables to Li Yi's rice bowl. Li Yi was skeptical and ate the food. It has to be said that under these few days of practice, Uchiha Makoto's cooking skills have been improved by leaps and bounds. Although it is not as good as those chefs, at least it can be eaten. And some dishes are quite delicious. After eating, I'm going to wash the dishes. Uchiha Makoto smiled at Li Yi and took the initiative to wash the dishes. Looking at Uchiha Makoto's graceful figure, Li Yi was very puzzled. What the hell happened to this woman? Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in Li Yi's mind, and another bold idea emerged in his mind. Does she like me? Without any hesitation, Li Yi immediately opened the system panel. However, after the mission, the item capturing Uchiha Makoto's heart still exists. It seems that I guessed wrong. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. He felt that Uchiha Makoto may be because he likes him, so he will show such a gentle side, in order to pursue him. When on Earth, many women chased Li Yi like this, so Li Yi is very clear about this routine. However, it now appears that he guessed wrong. What the hell is going on then? Li was undecided. In the end, Li Yi did not come up with any reasonable reason. Uchiha Makoto finished washing the dishes, walked out of the kitchen, and said, let's go to training. The voice is very soft. Well, good. Li Yi nodded lightly. So, the two went to the training ground together. Peace of mind for a day. In the blink of an eye, the sun sets, and dusk falls. I worked overtime in the hospital until 11 o'clock today. There is really no way, I can only update so much temporarily. I hope readers will forgive me. Chapter 152_ominous foreboding. The chapter errors that appeared in the previous chapter are being revised by the customer service staff. Burning cloud Yuhi glowed brightly, hanging above the sky, especially dazzling. Li Yi was lying on the ground, panting, sweat soaked all over his clothes. Just barely finished the task today. Uchiha Makoto stood beside Li Yi and said softly, not bad. Before she finished speaking, she lifted Li Yi from the ground. I don't dislike the sweat on Li Yi's body at all. Li Yi frowned slightly and said, I'd better rest for a while and go by myself. No, it's time-consuming, I'll carry you behind my back. Uchiha Makoto smiled and said. Li Yi's kindness was difficult, so he had to agree. On the way, Li Yi hesitated. He just wanted to ask, why did Uchiha Makoto suddenly change his temperament? In the end, what happened? However, in the end, Li Yi didn't ask much. Under the surprised gazes of countless people, Lin Chen was carried by Uchiha Makoto and returned home. Home. Uchiha Makoto said softly, "Go and take a bath." Li Yi nodded. During this time, he has recovered some physical strength, at least taking a bath by himself, there is no problem. Li Yi staggered into the bathroom. Uchiha Makoto washes Li Yi's clothes. When Li Yi came out of the shower, Uchiha Makoto was sitting on the sofa. Seeing Li Yi walk out of the bathroom, she asked, "Is Ayame not here today?" Li Yi shook his head, "I don't know either." "What's wrong with her?" Uchiha Makoto asked. "Aren't we going to have a look?" "I am going to have a look." Li Yi nodded. "Let's go together then." Uchiha Makoto stood up. "Aren't you going to take a bath?" Li Yi asked. "I don't sweat a lot and don't need to wash." Uchiha Makoto shook his head slightly. At this time, she had changed into a new dress. As for the clothes she carried Li Yi before, they have been washed and are hanging on the balcony. After all, it was already wet. The two went out together. Ayame's doorstep. Boom. Li Yi knocked on the door. But no one responded. Uchiha Makoto asked suspiciously, "Uncle Ichiraku's ramen restaurant, hasn't it closed yet?" "Well, Uncle Ichiraku is very industrious. He doesn't get off work until after dinner time." Li Yi nodded. "Ayame should be the only one at home now, I don't know what that little girl is doing." "She's sick and probably sleeping." Uchiha Makoto said. "Well, it's not impossible." Li Yi nodded and continued knocking on the door. But, 3 minutes later, there was still no response from the door. Uchiha Makoto's eyebrows were all frowning and he said, "Why do I have an ominous premonition?" "Don't say it, so am I." Li Yi nodded teasingly. "Then what shall we do?" Uchiha Makoto looked at Li Yi. Li Yi first looked around. Ichiraku's house is very tightly designed, let alone a thief, even a powerful ninja might not be able to break in. Therefore, it is not advisable to steal into the house. Li Yi began to recall whether he had been to Uncle Ichiraku's house before. However, he has only eaten ramen at Ichiraku Ramen Restaurant, and has never been to Uncle Ichiraku's house. It seems that the only way to do it is to do so first. In the end, Li Yi made a decision. Without any hesitation, Li Yi closed his eyes and started to use the ability of the door fruit to sense where Ayame was. There was a systematic code error in the previous chapter, which caused the chapter to be wrong and confusing. The staff is revising it as soon as possible. I hope readers will be patient, thank you. Chapter 153 Ayame's sickness. Uchiha Makoto did not interrupt. She knew that Li Yi was using his abilities. After half a minute, Li Yi opened his eyes. Uchiha Makoto immediately asked, "Is Ayame at home?" Li Yi kept knocking on the door, but no one opened the door. In this case, there are only two possibilities. 1. Ayame is sleeping. 2. Ayame was not at home. Li Yi nodded. She is at home now. With the ability of the door fruit, Li Yi can feel that Ayame is more than 10 meters in front of the left. In other words, she is at home now. Uchiha Makoto touched his chin and said, "It seems that this girl is sleeping very deeply. We knocked on the door, but she couldn't hear." Li Yi nodded. "Then what should we do now? Sneak in secretly, or do you teleport in with the ability to teleport in space?" Uchiha Makoto asked. Li Yi touched his chin, then shook his head, "No need." "Then what do you want to do?" Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. "Wait for Uncle Ichiraku to come back." Li Yi replied. "How long until then?" Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. "Ichiraku doesn't know when he will be back." However, Ayame is very ill. If Ayame has an accident, then you Lee can't regret to die. Lee estimated the time, and then said, Uncle Ichiraku will be back in about 10 minutes. Okay. Uchiha Makoto agreed. She knew that Lee would not do anything unsure. The two began to wait patiently. Lee said, Makoto, help me keep an eye on everything around me. Huh? Uchiha Makoto asked. Why did this? However, she didn't ask more, but nodded and agreed, okay, wrap it on me. After speaking, she took a deep breath, and a Yuhi light suddenly flashed across her eyes. Sharingan opens instantly. Lee was calm. The two waited patiently. Before I knew it, 10 minutes passed. A middle-aged figure came slowly from afar. Seeing this person, Uchiha Mikoto's eyes lit up. Uncle Ichiraku is back. Lee nodded lightly. Everything is as expected. Ichiraku walked in front of him and was a little surprised to see Lee and Uchiha Makoto. He blinked and asked, You two are waiting for me. Uchiha Makoto answered first. Uncle Ichiraku, isn't Ayame sick? Let's see her. So it is. Ichiraku nodded lightly, then inserted the key and opened the door. Come in. After speaking, Uncle Ichiraku entered the house first. Lee followed. Uchiha Makoto walked last. But at this moment, Uchiha Makoto's expression suddenly froze, as if he had noticed something. He looked back suddenly. However, there was no one behind him, let alone anyone. Am I feeling wrong? Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. She had clearly felt just now that someone was behind her. However, when she looked with Sharingan, she found that there was no one behind her. She believes in her Sharingan. Therefore, Uchiha Makoto didn't think about it, and walked into the room. Bang! The door was closed. Ichiraku brought Lee and Uchiha Makoto to Ayame's room. Ayame's room is very neat, even neater than Uchiha Makoto's. Of course, Lee has never been to Uchiha Makoto's boudoir, but these days, when living with Uchiha Makoto, Lee knows that although Uchiha Makoto is neat and tidy, it is definitely not as good as Ayame. At this time, Ayame was lying on the bed and sleeping. It's just that she didn't sleep peacefully this time. The cheeks are yuhi, the breathing is heavy, and the brows are furrowed, as if in a nightmare. Uchiha Makoto noticed the seriousness of the problem and immediately asked, Uncle Ichiraku, didn't you bring Ayame to the medical department? I went there and the medical department said it was just a common cold, not a serious illness. Ichiraku replied. Uchiha Makoto thought, Ayame got it, I'm afraid it's not a minor illness. Uncle Ichiraku, I also learned medical ninjutsu for a few days, can I show it to Ayame? Uchiha Makoto asked. Of course, of course. Ichiraku nodded immediately. Uchiha Makoto sat next to Ayame, stretched out his right hand, and placed it on Ayame's heart. A faint green light shone from under Uchiha Makoto's palm, and a gentle force radiated out, making people feel refreshed. Uchiha Makoto closed his eyes and sensed Ayame's body. After half a minute, Uchiha Makoto opened his eyes. Uncle Ichiraku asked worriedly, Is my Ayame all right? It's all right. Uchiha Makoto shook his head slightly. At the same time, Ayame seemed to be awakened and slowly opened his eyes. Seeing that Lee was beside him, Ayame blinked in disbelief. Seeing his daughter wake up, Uncle Ichiraku was a little happy and said, Talk about it, I'll go out and make tea for you. After speaking, Uncle Ichiraku walked out of the room. So, there were only 3 people left in the room. Lee immediately asked, Is there really nothing abnormal? Well, really. Uchiha Makoto nodded lightly, but finally changed the subject, but that's what puzzles me the most. Brother Lee, what are you talking about? Ayame was very puzzled. However, because her body is very weak, she is also weak when speaking. Didn't say anything. Lee shook his head, walked to Ayame's side, and asked, "Ayame, did you come into contact with any strange strangers the day before you got sick?" Ayame first recalled, and then shook his head. "No, the people I contacted are all customers in the ramen restaurant, and I know all of these customers, and they are not strangers." "Lee Yi, do you think that Ayame's illness was deliberately framed?" Uchiha Makoto sensed Lee Yi's mind and asked. "It's just that it's possible, not necessarily." Lee Yi shook his head. "Brother Lee Yi, I really haven't met any strangers, cough cough." Before Ayame could finish speaking, he coughed for a while. Uchiha Makoto hurriedly lifted her up, patted her back lightly, and said, "Ayame, you're not feeling well, talk less." Ayame nodded. Lee Yi asked, "Has the medical department prescribed any medicine for you?" Ayame pointed to the drawer on the left. Lee Yi immediately opened the drawer and found more than 10 kinds of medicines in the drawer. Ayame explained, "My sister from the medical department let me boil and drink it every day, and then cooperate with the chakra treatment, and I will be cured in 3 days." "What day is it now?" Lee Yi asked. It's the 2nd day now." Ayame coughed and said. "That means you will be fine tomorrow." Lee Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Chapter 154-1010 gives you the following. The next day, Lee Yi returned home. Lee Yi took a shower first. Uchiha Makoto after bathing. They both took a shower and sat on the sofa together. Uchiha Makoto asked, "It's the 3rd day, do you want to see Ayame?" "Well, go." Lee Yi nodded. "Then when are you going to go?" Uchiha Makoto asked. "After we have eaten, shall we go now?" Lee Yi thought for a moment, then said, "Let's go eat ramen. After eating ramen, we will go to see Ayame." Uchiha Makoto head tapped. "All right. Just do it." So, the two set off for the Ichiraku ramen restaurant. It's dinner time, and the business of the ramen restaurant is very hot. However, because Ayame was away, Uncle Ichiraku was busy and sweating profusely. Lee Yi turned to look at Uchiha Makoto and said, "Why don't you split up and help Uncle Ichiraku?" "That's what it means." Uchiha Makoto lightly tapped his head, then hand sealed with both hands, and whispered in his mouth, "The art of shadow clone." Bang! With a crisp sound, beside Uchiha Makoto, a cloud of white mist exploded without warning. And when the white fog dissipated, another Uchiha Makoto appeared in Lee Yi's field of vision. "It is Uchiha Makoto's clone. Let's go." Uchiha Makoto stretched, revealing a perfect curve, and walked into the ramen restaurant first. Lee Yi followed to Uchiha Makoto. Seeing Lee Yi and Uchiha Makoto, Uncle Ichiraku immediately asked, "It's you two. What do you two eat? I'll make it for you." Uchiha Makoto's avatar immediately stepped forward and said, "Uncle Ichiraku, I'll help you serve the ramen. You can make ramen with peace of mind." Ichiraku immediately asked to refuse. "How is this possible? You are so busy, how can I delay you?" However, before Uncle Ichiraku finished speaking, the clone said, "Uncle, I'm just a clone, the real body is there." Pointed to the deity of Uchiha Makoto. "Oh, so it is." Uncle Ichiraku suddenly realized. Uchiha Makoto said, "Uncle Ichiraku, let my avatar help you." Kindness is difficult. Ichiraku had to agree. The two finished their ramen. Ichiraku handed Lee Yi a key and said, "This is the key to my house. You can go in directly when you go to see Ayame later." "Okay, thank you Uncle Ichiraku." Lee Yi nodded his thanks. "You don't want to thank me. Actually, I want to thank you. I'm very touched that you are so busy, but you still have time to take care of Ayame," Ichiraku said in a sincere tone. Because the business of the ramen restaurant is very hot, Lee Yi and Uncle Ichiraku did not say much. Uncle Ichiraku finally received the money, and Lee Yi and Uchiha Makoto left the ramen restaurant together. Lee Yi put his hands on the back of his head and asked, the ramen made by Uncle Ichiraku is really delicious, right? Uchiha Makoto nodded lightly. Then, she turned to look at Li Yi and asked, "Do you like to eat?" "I like to eat." Li Yi nodded. "When no one took care of me before, I didn't want to cook by myself. At that time, I came to eat ramen almost every day." "No wonder you know Uncle Ichiraku so well." Uchiha Makoto tapped his head, and suddenly said again, "If you like to eat, I can learn from Uncle Ichiraku. Later, I will give you a meal from Tenten." "Huh?" Li Yi frowned. "It's not just that it's dirty. More because, why did Uchiha Makoto suddenly say such a thing? Tenten make it for me." "How could Tenten? I'm not your relative, just your friend. You will marry someone else sooner or later. How can Tenten feed me? Besides, even if I'm your relative, you can't give me food under Tenten. At that time, you will have your own career, your own family, and your own husband and children. You can't even manage them, so how can you manage me? Unless you marry me." Li Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, I didn't think of it. The implication of Uchiha Makoto's words is that he wants to marry me. What woman would Tenten cook for a man? Of course the man's wife." Li Yi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He didn't know why Uchiha Makoto's temperament changed so much. Logically speaking, she should be very cold to herself now. After all, in her eyes, she is a scumbag who has played with countless women. But the fact is the complete opposite. Not only is she not cold at all, but she is more gentle than before. What exactly is going on? Could it be that this woman is a green slave? Suddenly, this bold idea emerged in Li Yi's mind. However, thinking of the original work of Hokage, Li Yi quickly denied this speculation. Uchiha Makoto is a good wife who runs a family and raises her husband and children. How could she be a green slave? Li Yi couldn't understand what Uchiha Makoto was thinking. Li Yi wanted to ask this question. That is, every time Li Yi opened his mouth to ask, Uchiha Makoto would interrupt and change the subject before he finished speaking. Li Yi knew that he couldn't get the answer for a while. So he didn't ask any more questions. The two came to the front of Uncle Ichiraku's house together. Li Yi first knocked on the door, but got no response from anyone. Li Yi frowned slightly. Logically, Ayame should be healed by now. Even if it doesn't heal, it should be better 9 times out of 10. This is the original words of the medical department. But, now, Ayame is still sleeping. Is the condition not getting better? Uchiha Makoto was also aware of this problem and said at the time, "Li Yi, let's go in quickly." Li Yi nodded, inserted the key into the keyhole, and opened the door. The room was dark. Li Yi turned on the light and entered Ayame's room. To find out that Ayame is indeed sleeping in bed. Li Yi walked up to Ayame and touched Ayame's forehead. "It doesn't matter if you don't touch it." With this touch, Li Yi suddenly retracted his right hand, as if electrocuted. "What's wrong, Li Yi?" Uchiha Makoto asked immediately. Li Yi didn't answer, but grabbed Ayame's hand. Ayame's palm is not only frighteningly cold, but also extremely stiff. Like the palm of a dead man. Uchiha Makoto also realized that something was wrong, and immediately stretched out his right hand and touched Ayame's heart. The next moment, her pupils shrank slightly. Without any hesitation, she directly lifted Ayame from the bed, and said softly, "Her heart rate is extremely slow. If it goes on like this, she will die. Let's take her to the medical department quickly." Quick. Digression. The day Tsunade returned, after Li Yi finished this practice. Chapter 155_ won't let her die. In the medical department. Ayame is being rescued with all his strength. Li Yi and Uchiha Makoto are waiting outside. Li Yi frowned tightly. He didn't know what disease Ayame got, but he knew that Ayame's disease must be framed by people. Fool can guess. Ayame's health has always been very good, how could he suddenly become seriously ill? Li Yi doesn't know who actually gave the hand to Ayame. Li Yi has several suspects, and the most suspicious person is Kaharu Yutane's younger brother, turning to Lexus. If there is no way to go, then Li Yi would rather risk being a missing nin and interrogate his suspects one by one. By all means. Uchiha Makoto rarely sees Li Yi's somber expression. To be precise, she had never seen Li Yi's expression like this. She knew that Li Yi must be in a very bad mood right now, so she didn't say much, just held Li Yi's hand lightly to comfort him. I do not know how long it has been. Li Yi seems to have thought of a way. The gloomy complexion finally regained its brightness. Uchiha Makoto asked, "What did you think of?" Li Yi shook his head and said nothing. Obviously do not want to say more. Uchiha Makoto is also very knowledgeable and didn't ask much. How long has it been? Li Yi asked, his voice a little hoarse. It's been over 50 minutes, almost an hour, Uchiha Makoto said. Will you wait another hour? Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Uchiha Makoto sighed suddenly and said, if only Tsunade-sama were here. When he said this, Uchiha Makoto gave Li Yi a special glance. However, he found that Li Yi had no expression on his face. Seems indifferent to the name. Uchiha Makoto was a little surprised. Before, Uzumaki Kushina said to her, Tsunade likes Li Yi. Uchiha Makoto did not believe it. She knew that Uzumaki Kushina was not the kind of brag. Therefore, she just said Tsunade's name to test Li Yi. But I didn't expect that Li Yi would be indifferent. Could it be that what Uzumaki Kushina said was false? Li Yi and Tsunade don't know each other at all. Should be right. The two sides must not know each other. Li Yi has only risen in the past few days, while Master Tsunade has risen many years ago. The two of them are completely different from each other, and their identities are so different. How could it be possible to know each other? Thinking of this, Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes flashed with joy. If the two really don't know each other, that's great. However, Li Yi said, she is out of town now, and she won't be back for a while, so I can't count on her. If she is there, then Ayame's illness might not be a problem. Whether in the original, Hokage, or in the real world, Tsunade is the best doctor in the ninja world. Her medical skills are enough to rejuvenate her hands and bring her back to life. Others are not in the same realm as her at all. Yeah, Tsunade-sama travels all the year round, and I don't know when he will come back. Uchiha Makoto sighed lightly. We can only wait for the results of the medical staff. The two said no more. Time flows by minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, another hour passed. Crunch. The door of the ward was suddenly opened, and a medical staff came out. Uchiha Makoto and Li Yi stood up immediately. The former asked, how is it? Medical staff shook his head. It can only be said that it temporarily stabilized her condition, but this is not a long-term solution. If no specific medicine is found, then her condition will break out again in 3 or 4 hours. What will happen then? Uchiha Makoto tensed in his heart, put his hands over his heart, and asked. When the time comes, that little girl will die. The doctor's tone was extremely low. Kabuto in her hands, lowered her head, and left with a sigh. Uchiha Makoto sat down abruptly. For a while it was difficult to recover. It was obvious that I was talking and laughing with them yesterday, and I was cooking for them the day before yesterday, so why is it suddenly impossible now? In the end, why is human life really that fragile? Another medical staff came out of the ward. Li Yi immediately asked, what is the special medicine? I don't know. Medical staff shook his head. We don't even know what kind of disease the little girl has. How can we make special medicines? Now, we use chakra to temporarily stabilize her condition, but this is only our chakra, not her. Her own chakra. She is not a ninja, and there are very few chakras, and it is impossible to rule out the disease in her body. Quote. Ninjas generally do not get sick. They have chakras in their bodies, and chakras are the strongest immune organ. Once the disease enters the body, there is no need for immune organs such as lymph and spleen to operate, and the chakras in the body will kill the disease directly. So, as long as you become a ninja, especially after Chunin, you will generally not get sick. But, coincidentally, Ayame is not a ninja. Her own immune organs can't resist the disease in her body at all, so if this goes on like this, Ayame will surely die. Alas, we are also powerless. Go and call the little girl's father and let her father see her one last time. After speaking, the medical staff bowed their heads, shook their heads, and left with a sigh. I'll call Uncle Ichiraku here. Uchiha Makoto's clone is still with Uncle Ichiraku, so Uchiha Makoto closed his eyes and planned to use the clone to contact Uncle Ichiraku. However, as soon as she closed her eyes, Uncle Ichiraku's roar came from outside the door. What's wrong with my daughter? Ichiraku ran in. Li Yi, what's wrong with my daughter? What's wrong with my daughter? Ichiraku asked while shaking Li Yi's body. Seeing that the door was open, Uncle Ichiraku realized the seriousness of the problem. As a father, at this moment, he is so anxious. Li Yi didn't answer. Uchiha Makoto explained the ins and outs of the incident. How is this possible? How is this possible? Ayame is ideally in good health. How could he suddenly become seriously ill? Ichiraku ran into the ward with a face full of disbelief. Uchiha Makoto was afraid that Uncle Ichiraku would not be able to think about it, so he followed in. Li Yi stood there and didn't move. He clenched his hands slightly, and there was a dazzling cold light in those eyes. He won't let Ayame die. No matter what the cost. Li Yi now has two methods. 1. Arrange the suspect objects and defeat them one by one. 2. Use the evolution opportunity to evolve the pill. One after two. So, Li Yi clenched his hands and got ready for action. However, at this moment, an incomparably hoarse sneer, giving people goosebumps, suddenly sounded from outside the door. He, little brother Li Yi, you seem to be in trouble. Note, Lin Chen is the male protagonist of another book in the world. Sometimes, he occasionally writes shit. I hope everyone will point out that the world will revise it as soon as possible. Chapter 156 _ Who Threatens Whom? An incomparably hoarse voice, making people creepy, suddenly sounded from the door. Li Yi immediately looked up. At the end of the line of sight, a man dressed in Jonin clothes and dressed normally, but his face was extremely pale, with an evil arc on the corner of his mouth, walked in. Li Yi's brows suddenly wrinkled. Because the comer is none other than Orochimaru. Li Yi did not answer Orochimaru. Orochimaru didn't care at all, but continued to smile and said, Brother Li Yi, I know, is your little girlfriend seriously ill? Li Yi wants to refute. She is not my little girlfriend, I only take her as my sister. However, Li Yi suddenly felt that why did he need to explain to Orochimaru? What is he? Therefore, Li Yi asked directly, what do you want to say? He. Orochimaru first let out an extremely cold laughter, which caused goosebumps all over, then stared into Li Yi's eyes and said, I want to say, I know about this disease. Swish. Li Yi took a step forward and came to Orochimaru in an instant. Suddenly, a chopstick-sized Dinghaishin needle appeared in his hand. Li Yi held up the sea god needle, pressed against Orochimaru's body, and roared in a low voice, what do you know? Li Yi's voice was like the roar of a beast. Li Yi came in one step, causing a gust of wind, and Orochimaru's hair fluttered wildly. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, He, brother Li Yi, don't be in such a hurry, listen to me carefully. Don't give a shit. Li Yi stared at Orochimaru and shouted in a low voice. In fact, Li Yi also knows that he is quite funny. His own strength is only equivalent to Genin, even with Devil Fruit and Rui Golden Hoop, at most he can only exert the strength of a special Jonin. And Orochimaru is an elite Jonin. The strength of the two is not on the same level at all. However, now that he is in a hurry, Lee Yi has nothing to do with it. Orochimaru's voice was extremely hoarse, and said, "This is a disease from the land of water. It really is the country of water." Lee Yi's eyes are cold. Before, among his suspects, the suspicion of the land of water was second only to Lexus. Including Lee Yi, who thought that someone was following him, he should also be a person from the land of water. Recently, Sarutobi Hiruzen signed an agreement with the land of water, which caused the whole village to be unhappy. Lee Yi didn't intend to take care of these matters. After all, Konoha village is born or destroyed, so what does it have to do with him? Just take care of yourself. Lee Yi asked directly, "Do you have a way to cure this disease?" Lee Yi knows that Orochimaru is a very strange person. Whether in the original Hokage or in the current world, Orochimaru does a lot of things that are counterintuitive. He can solve many problems that ordinary people cannot solve. Yes. Orochimaru nodded directly. Lee Yi's eyes lit up. "Then go and save him." "Why should I save her?" Orochimaru shrugged and asked. "She has no relatives and no reason with me. What good is it for me to save her?" "You are from Konoha village, she is also from Konoha village, you save your own countrymen, why not?" Lee Yi asked back. "I don't think she is my compatriot. I just happen to be born in Konoha village. I can't even manage myself, so why should I care about others?" Orochimaru asked. He, little brother Lee Yi, does what I say make sense? Then how can you save her?" Lee Yi asked bluntly. "Sure enough, you are a smart person, and I like to talk to smart people." Orochimaru chuckled. "Don't talk nonsense." Lee Yi stared at Orochimaru. Orochimaru said, "Actually, I want to save her life, it's very simple, one life for another." Lee Yi frowned sharply. Orochimaru stared at Lee Yi and said word by word, "What do you think about trading your life for hers?" Lee Yi smiled. Smiled disdainfully. The smile is also very cold. "What are you laughing at, brother Lee Yi?" Orochimaru asked, and at the same time, all the nerves in his body were tense. Obviously, he was afraid that Lee Yi would suddenly lose his mind and shoot at him. The last lesson made him feel a huge fear of Lee Yi. "I laugh at your ignorance." Lee Yi said so directly. "Why do you say this?" Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. "I am an extremely selfish person. I would never sacrifice myself for someone else. Orochimaru, you, wrong choice." Lee Yi stared into Orochimaru's eyes and said coldly. "Logically speaking, Lee Yi is a junior, Orochimaru is an elder, and he should respect Orochimaru very much. However, he is now calling Orochimaru by his name, and his tone is very disrespectful." Orochimaru was not angry, but shrugged lightly and said, "The decision is in your hands, I will not force you, but you must be clear, the decision to save her or not is in my hands, and no one can force me." Lee Yi hummed, and without saying a word, passed Orochimaru directly. Orochimaru stood there without turning his head and asked, "Where are you going?" "Go to your teacher, Sarutobi Hiruzen." Lee Yi said directly. Orochimaru's pupils shrank slightly and asked, "What are you doing with him?" "Report you." Lee Yi said. Orochimaru's face changed, he turned sharply, and asked, "What do you mean?" Lee Yi neither turned nor stopped, and asked, "Orochimaru, your experiment is doing okay. Do you need me to get someone to support your business?" However, Lee Yi didn't finish his words. Boom! The violent aura erupted from Orochimaru's body, like a vast ocean, turning into a monstrous wave, which shot towards Lee Yi with a bang. Lee Yi felt his legs bent and almost knelt down. Fortunately, Lee Yi was mentally prepared and did not kneel on the ground. But even so, a layer of cold sweat instantly broke out on his back. What a powerful momentum! This is the strength of Orochimaru, one of the Sannin. It really lives up to its reputation. At the same time, Orochimaru's incomparably cold and hoarse roar, like a roar from hell, filled with shock and anger, suddenly entered Li Yi's ears. What do you know? Yi Jiang stood up straight and said, Orochimaru, I know all your secrets, including your experiment location. I also know all about it. Orochimaru's face was extremely gloomy, as if water was about to drip. Li Yi took a heavy right foot, walked towards the door, and said in a cold voice, Orochimaru, it's useless for you to threaten me. Tell Sarutobi Hiruzen or not, the decision on this matter is in my hands. No people can force me. And I'm going to Hokage's office right now, and I'll tell him. Enough. Li Yi could finish speaking. Orochimaru shouted loudly, I'll save her. After speaking, Orochimaru took the momentum back into the body, turned around, and strode into the ward. Chapter 157 Li Yi's Plan. Li Yi watched Orochimaru enter the ward. But Li Yi did not enter the ward. Instead, they chose to wait outside the ward. He knew that Orochimaru had gone astray, but he was honest. And most importantly, Orochimaru's methods are different from ordinary people. So, now I can only trust him. But then again, I've leaked the secret now. I wonder if Orochimaru will do anything to kill me next. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Orochimaru's human experiments are his most taboo places. Dragons have inverse scales, they will die if you touch them. And the human experiment is Orochimaru's inverse scale. This time, if it wasn't for Ayame, Li Yi wouldn't be exposed. However, in order for Ayame to recover, Li Yi can't take care of it anymore. Now that things have happened and time cannot be reversed, it is better to make plans for the next step. If Orochimaru kills me, how can I resist? Orochimaru's methods are unpredictable. If he really wants to kill me, then I'm afraid I will die. Li Yi's eyes narrowed into a slit, and there was light shining in it. The end, Li Yi came to a conclusion. He was not Orochimaru's opponent. If Orochimaru really wanted to kill him, then he would die. Looks like there's only one other way. Li Yi touched his chin and murmured softly. Another way. Change Orochimaru's attitude. No relationship is absolute. Two people are friends, but not necessarily lifelong friends. Two people are enemies, not necessarily enemies for life. Friends and enemies, this kind of identity, if you say it is solid and solid, if you say it is not solid, it is actually broken when you touch it. Suddenly, Li Yi's eyes lit up, as if he had thought of something. The world is bustling for profit, and the world's hustle and bustle is for profit. As long as I can say things that are good for Orochimaru, and without me, it will no longer benefit. In this way, I can not only turn enemies into friends, more to obtain Orochimaru's asylum. Li Yi slammed his right fist on the palm of his left hand, making a crisp sound, and said, That's right, just do it like this. Li Yi knows a lot that Orochimaru doesn't. And these things are Li Yi's life-saving cards. In fact, Orochimaru's nature is not bad, it is only in pursuit of eternal life, so it will go astray. It is impossible to persuade him to give up the experiment of eternal life. Orochimaru has made up his mind, and it is useless to persuade him, including his teacher Sarutobi Hiruzen. So only the right medicine can be prescribed. Don't you want to have endless life? Well, I will satisfy you. In the original book of Hokage, Orochimaru has indeed obtained endless life, that is, through the curse mark, constantly taking away the body of others. As long as there is still his spell in this world, he will never die. Today, Orochimaru is also practicing mantras. However, his spell seal is immature. This is the biggest drawback of Orochimaru, and it is also where Orochimaru needs to improve the most. Li Yi only needs to point 1 or 2 points in this place, and that's it. Okay, that's it. Li Yi's eyes narrowed into a slit, and he secretly made a decision in his heart. At the same time, Uchiha Makoto and Uncle Ichiraku walked in. Uchiha Makoto asked, Li Yi, you invited Orochimaru-sama. Li Yi shook his head. It wasn't me, he came by himself. Master Orochimaru is also paying attention to this matter. Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly. It should be so, after all, he is one of the Sannin of Konoha village and it is his duty to serve the village and he is bound to do so. Lee Yi said. Is that so? Uchiha Makoto didn't say much. However, her face was a little uncomfortable. What's wrong? Lee Yi asked. Nothing. Uchiha Makoto shook his head. Lee Yi smiled and said, I know even if you don't tell me, you don't believe in Orochimaru, right? Uchiha Makoto's dream flashed, looked up at Lee Yi, and said with a wry smile, sure enough, after living with you for so many days, most of my thoughts can't be hidden from you. If you have anything to say, let's go home and talk. There are many people here, so it's not a place to talk. Lee Yi shook his head and said. Well, good. Uchiha Makoto head taps. Lee Yi turned to look at Uncle Ichiraku again and said, Uncle, Ayame will be fine, don't worry. Ichiraku nodded. The legendary Sannin, which one is not traveling all the year round? I didn't expect that Orochimaru-sama would come back at this time. God's eyes are open. Lee Yi smiled without saying a word. Time passed by minute. After about an hour. Boom. A sudden light flashed in the ward. However, the light comes and goes quickly. In the blink of an eye, the light disappeared like a tide. Crunch. The door was opened. Orochimaru came out, sweating profusely. Lee Yi with those cold eyes, his voice was so hoarse that his hair stood on end, and he said, Little brother Lee Yi, I fulfilled the agreement between you and me. Lee Yi smiled directly, have you and I ever made an agreement? As soon as these words came out, Orochimaru's eyes suddenly flashed a killing intent. Lee Yi said calmly, right now, the decision is still in my hands, but I don't want to use this decision right now. After speaking, Lee Yi passed Orochimaru and stepped into the ward. Orochimaru breathed a sigh of relief imperceptibly. Uchiha Makoto doesn't know what Lee Yi and Orochimaru are talking about. But she didn't ask any further, instead she bowed to Orochimaru. Thank you Orochimaru-sama. After that, Uchiha Makoto also entered the ward. As for Uncle Ichiraku, he rushed into the ward as soon as Orochimaru came out. So, in the corridor, Orochimaru was the only one left. In Orochimaru's eyes, there is a cold light that has no emotional fluctuations, and the hands in the cuffs are also slightly clenched. In the ward, Ayame's complexion has returned to Yuhi's moistness, and the body temperature has gradually returned to normal. It's just that she's still sleeping, and it doesn't look like she won't wake up for a while. Uchiha Makoto bumped Lee Yi lightly, and asked in Lee Yi's ear, do you have some kind of handle from Lord Orochimaru in your hand? Uchiha Makoto is a very smart woman, although she can't understand the conversation between Lee Yi and Orochimaru, but she can see that Lee Yi is threatening Orochimaru. Otherwise, Lee Yi wouldn't have said that kind of thing just now. Lee Yi didn't hide it, and nodded directly, yeah. Return this handle to Orochimaru-sama as soon as possible. Uchiha Makoto said directly, Master Orochimaru is not an ordinary person, and he is different from the other two ninjas. You must not think that you can threaten him. He is a very scary person, very scary. Chapter 158 Tsunade's Medicine. Ayame is fine. However, she has just recovered from a serious illness and needs a good rest. Therefore, both Lee Yi and Uchiha Makoto stopped disturbing and walked out of the ward. However, as soon as he walked out of the ward, he was greeted by the slightly pale figure of Orochimaru. He walked up to Lee Yi and asked directly, Brother Lee Yi, can you go out and talk? What time is it? Lee Yi asked back, aren't you tired? Aren't you going to sleep? Hee, Brother Lee Yi, you and I are both young, why do you need to sleep? And what time is it? Orochimaru said with a sneer, his voice so hoarse that it gave me goosebumps all over. Lee Yi said directly, life is inherently fragile, staying up late will affect life expectancy and make life more fragile. Lee Yi's voice was flat. In Orochimaru's ears, it was like a blast of thunder. His face was a little unsightly. He stared at Lee Yi and said, "That's right, little brother, you're right. Uchiha Makoto wants to speak for Lee Yi. Although Orochimaru is one of Sannin, she is not weak in Uchiha Makoto. As the princess of the Uchiha family, she is qualified to speak for Lee Yi. So, she wanted Orochimaru to stop pestering Lee Yi for the time being. However, before she could speak, Lee Yi nodded and agreed. Okay, go out and talk, this is not the place to talk. Orochimaru smiled happily, nodded and said, "Ha ha ha, brother Lee Yi is indeed a smart person, talking to a smart person is really effortless." Uchiha Makoto's eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. Why? Why did Lee Yi do this? And he reject Orochimaru just now? Why did he suddenly change his mind and agree to Orochimaru? Couldn't he see that Orochimaru was plotting against him? Uchiha Makoto is in a hurry. However, words that are spoken are like poured water. Since it cannot be changed, it is better to think of ways to deal with it. Therefore, Uchiha Makoto asked directly, "Master Orochimaru, can I go out with you?" It depends on brother Lee Yi. Orochimaru said with a smile. Uchiha Makoto's eyes lit up and turned to look at Lee Yi. With him, Lee Yi's safety can have greater protection. However, Lee Yi shook his head. "Makoto, you go back first. I will communicate with Master Orochimaru, and go back in a while." Uchiha Makoto immediately shook his head. "Lee Yi, in fact, I have nothing to do when I go back, why don't I stay with you?" However, before Uchiha Makoto finished speaking, Lee Yi interrupted. "No, you go back and clean up the house first, I'll go back later." Between Uchiha Makoto's brows, a look of displeasure flashed across. Hell is going on with this Lee Yi? I've already told him the terrible thing about Orochimaru-sama, how could he be so unscrupulous? You have the handle of Lord Orochimaru in your hand, and Orochimaru may even eliminate you in order to eliminate this handle. Can't you guess this? You are usually so smart and meticulous, why are you so stupid all of a sudden? Uchiha Makoto on his face, there is a kind of blame that hates iron for not becoming steel. Lee Yi patted her on the shoulder and said, "Be good, be obedient, you go home first and wait, I'll be home in a while, if I can't get home within half an hour, you come out and find me, it's not good. You will use the power of your Uchiha clan to find me. Don't worry, I am with Orochimaru-sama, and you will protect me and I will not be in danger." Quote. Lee Yi's voice was suddenly flat, but in his tone, there seemed to be an invisible magic power, which made people feel at ease. Hearing Lee Yi's plan, Uchiha Makoto finally nodded and agreed. "Okay, I'll wait for you to come back in half an hour." After saying that, Uchiha Makoto turned and left. Looking at her graceful back, Orochimaru chuckled and said, "Little brother Lee Yi's luck is really good. I didn't expect that the princesses of the Uchiha clan would all love you. I don't know if he has a secret love for me, all I know is that we have a good relationship." Lee Yi shrugged. Orochimaru suddenly asked, "However, brother Lee Yi, do you know that Uchiha Makoto has a fiancé?" "I don't know." Lee Yi shook his head deliberately. "No wonder." Orochimaru nodded, and then smiled again. "Brother Lee, I will not hide it from you. Uchiha Makoto has a fiancé named Uchiha Fugaku. He is the most talented person in the Uchiha clan today, and he is also the most likely to inherit the patriarch. This person, if you rob a woman from him, the difficulty in this will probably not be small." Quote. "Well, you're right." Lee Yi nodded in agreement, but suddenly changed the subject. "But what does it have to do with me? I never said I wanted to pursue her." I think she seems to have this kind of meaning towards you." Orochimaru said with a laugh. "I have to say that Orochimaru is very high in terms of emotional intelligence and intelligence. Whether in the original book of Hokage, or in this world, his emotional intelligence and IQ are not comparable to ordinary people. It's a pity that he is going astray step by step. Otherwise, with his contribution, at least the Konoha village can move forward for 7 or 8 years. After all, there are very few people in this world who believe in experiments and science. Lee Yi didn't want to talk nonsense with Orochimaru, so he just walked away, turned his back to Orochimaru and said, "Let's go. Go out and find a place where no one is there to talk about business. It's best to finish the talk within half an hour, otherwise the girl can't find it when she comes out. Then our whole Konoha village will be in chaos." Quote. Hearing this, Orochimaru's pair of snake pupils gradually narrowed into a slit. However, Orochimaru did not stop there, but followed Lee Yi out of the medical department. Dark as ink. The bright moon hangs high. Lee Yi leaned against a big tree, wrapped his arms around him, and asked, "Tell me, what do you want to talk to me about?" Orochimaru stood opposite Lee Yi and said with a smile, "Brother Lee Yi, I'm not talking nonsense with you, 2 things." Saying that, Orochimaru raised a finger. "The first thing, the medicine to save that little girl was not developed by me. I just provided chakra to promote the rapid digestion of the medicine in that little girl's body." "Not developed by you?" Lee Yi raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Who developed that?" Lee Yi knows Orochimaru very well, and there is no need for him to lie about it. So, Lee Yi was very curious, who saved Ayame? Orochimaru is not a person who likes to sell secrets, so he didn't bother about Lee Yi's question, and answered bluntly, "That person is the same teacher as me, my junior sister, and one of Konoha Sannin. There are only a handful in the ninja world." Hearing this, Lee Yi's pupils have shrunk to ultimate. He is not a fool, how can he not hear that the person Orochimaru said is Tsunade? Chapter 159 Lee Yi's Worries. Guess it. Seeing the rather surprised expression on Lee Yi's face, Orochimaru laughed and asked, "A fool can guess it." Lee Yi came back to his senses and nodded lightly, "I was really deceived by you." "Haha, brother Lee Yi, don't be so ugly, what do you mean by being deceived by me?" Orochimaru's laughter made him uncomfortable, and he said, "Can you get Tsunade's medicine without me?" Lee Yi flipped a Byakugan and didn't want to talk to Orochimaru. "Would you like to know how Tsunade has been doing lately?" Orochimaru asked. Lee Yi did not speak. Silence is the default. Orochimaru sighed and said, "Actually, I didn't even expect you to be the Lee Yi that Tsunade often referred to." "Oh, she often mentions me." Lee Yi frowned slightly. "Of course, when I fought with him back then, the name Lee Yi, in my ears, echoed more than 100 times. Orochimaru said with a smile, "Even when she sleeps, sometimes she dreams and talks, she will call your name. You don't know how jealous Jiraiya is." Lee Yi frowned slightly. Jiraiya is also known as a good seaman, and performs tasks with Jiraiya. I don't know if Tsunade will be wiped out. Thinking of this, Lee Yi felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. However, immediately afterward, Lee Yi was relieved. Because she knows Tsunade's temper. Jiraiya dare not wipe her oil. In the original Hokage, Jiraiya almost died twice. Once, when facing the four-tailed Naruto, he was accidentally slapped to death by Naruto. And another time, Tsunade did it. He peeked at Tsunade taking a bath, but he didn't expect to be found by the latter. In a fit of rage, the latter broke Jiraiya's ribs with a punch and almost died. Tsunade's violent temper, Lee Yi is well aware of it. Jiraiya also dares to play tricks on his lips, but he doesn't dare to really wipe Tsunade's oil. Of course, Lee Yi also knows that although Jiraiya is called a good immortal, in his bones, he is a guy with quite a sense of justice. Lee Yi would rather Tsunade stay with Jiraiya than Tsunade stay with Orochimaru. After all, Orochimaru has just turned black now, so he might do something crazy. At this time, Orochimaru laughed again and said, "It's just, I didn't expect that the little brother Yila from the land of rain turned out to be Li Yi from our Konoha village. Li Yi didn't say anything, but asked directly, how is Tsunade doing recently? Don't be rude. She should be back in a week. Orochimaru said directly. Li Yi's eyes lit up. Are you looking forward to it? Orochimaru looked at Li Yi with a smile and asked. Li Yi didn't hide his emotions, and nodded directly, yeah. When the time comes, how are you going to explain Uchiha Makoto? Orochimaru asked suddenly. Are you curious about such a thing? Li Yi is strange. Orochimaru should only be curious about the art of longevity, not the slightest interest in the love between men and women. Otherwise, with Orochimaru's talent, strength, and charming appearance, he would have known how many women he had played with. Tsunade is my junior sister after all. I'm more or less concerned about the affairs between you and her. Orochimaru explained with a smile. Okay. Li Yi shrugged. The soldiers will block the water and cover up. The future hasn't happened yet, so why prepare now? Besides, Makoto and I are above board, and no one outside can say anything. You feel upright, but outsiders don't necessarily feel that way, and Tsunade doesn't necessarily feel that way. Orochimaru touched his chin and said with a smile, a man and a woman are in the same room, and he is young, so he might do something out of line. The clearer is self-cleaning. I don't bother to explain it to you. Li Yi didn't want to talk about these things, so he changed the subject. What else? Besides, she will be back in a week. Is there anything else? She's in the land of water now. Orochimaru said. The land of water is very strange, and she wants to investigate there for a week and then come back. The land of water. Li Yi frowned. Today, the Mizukage of the Land of Water is a puppet controlled by Uchiha Madara. Tsunade is certainly not weak, but will her investigation be in danger? Li Yi was a little worried about Tsunade. After all, in the heyday of Tsunade, he couldn't beat Uchiha Madara with a single finger, let alone that Tsunade has not yet reached its peak. Are you worried about Tsunade? Looking at Li Yi's facial expression, Orochimaru asked again. You shouldn't be curious about this sort of thing. Li Yi said so directly. Oh, then what do you think I should be curious about? Orochimaru asked with a smile. The art of longevity and immortality. Li Yi said lightly. Orochimaru was silent for a while, and those eyes gradually narrowed into a slit, and their eyes flashed with cold light. Li Yi smiled lightly, as if not afraid at all, but said lightly, the second thing you want to say should be this, right? I really can't hide it from you. Orochimaru nodded. You want to ask how I know? Li Yi asked with a smile. Orochimaru nodded. I can only tell you that in this world, apart from you and me, there is no third person who knows your plans. Li Yi said. Are you following me? Orochimaru asked. However, as soon as he asked the question, he abandoned this guess. Because Li Yi can't follow him. He has absolute confidence in his own way of hiding. Mention Li Yi, even the 3 generations of Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen may not be able to track him. I'm not following you. You don't have to worry about how I know. Li Yi shook his head and said, not only do I know that you are doing human in vivo experiments, I also know that your in vivo experiments have encountered several problems. One is the problem of funding, the second is the problem of hiding places, and the third is that there are too few experimental subjects and too much data. Too little to improve the problem of the resident spell. Quote. You even know the boarding spell. Orochimaru couldn't bear the surprise in his heart any longer. The snake pupils shrank and asked incredulously. Li Yi smiled and didn't answer him, but said directly, I can give you a piece of advice for your 3 questions. Orochimaru's eyes lit up, then became cautious. What advice? Li Yi replied, find someone. Who? Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. Li Yi first looked around to confirm that there was no one around, then he attached to Orochimaru's ear and whispered 4 words, Shimura Danzo. Orochimaru's face changed again. Because he once wanted to find this person too. However, he did not trust Shimura Danzo and was worried about being betrayed by the latter, so he put the matter on hold. But I didn't expect that Lee would even say this name. Orochimaru asked directly, is he reliable? Chapter 160_guess. Lee said are the most serious problems Orochimaru is facing right now. 1. The issue of funding. Orochimaru's experiments were carried out in secret. The in vivo experiment is against the law of nature. If others know, then Orochimaru will not be able to eat Kabuto and go away. Therefore, almost no one in this world knows about Orochimaru's in vivo experiments. From the beginning to the present, all the expenses of his experiments have been borne by him. Although Orochimaru is one of the Sannin of Konoha village, he is not as rich as Tsunade, therefore, the funding problem is one of his biggest problems now. Second, the problem of location. Because Orochimaru's experiments cannot be made known to others, the experiment site must be far away from Konoha village. Since he was far away, Orochimaru had to keep on the road, running around every day. Example, Orochimaru set up an experimental site near Anning village. The distance from Konoha village to Anning village is not close, and it took him several hours. What's more, the relationship between Rain Country and Konoha village is not good. Orochimaru is a member of Konoha village and one of Konoha Sannin, and he was killed by everyone in the Rain Country. Therefore, the issue of hiding places is also one of the biggest problems facing Orochimaru at the moment. Third, there are too few subjects to perfect the curse mark problem. Orochimaru's experiments are justified. Therefore, every time he conducts experiments, he is extremely careful, and it takes a long time to investigate before he dares to start. Just like Uzumaki Violet, he knew that Uzumaki Violet was dead, so he dared to attack Violet, because he knew that Violet's relatives and friends would definitely receive treatment with the mentality of, a dead horse is a living horse doctor. Because of this, Orochimaru has so far tested too few subjects and obtained less data to perfect the spell. Boarding spell is Orochimaru's current main research direction. Once it can be researched, then he will be able to obtain immortal life. However, the three problems he is currently facing have seriously hindered his progress. Therefore, when Lee said the words, Shimura Danzo, Orochimaru's expression changed immediately. He asked, is he reliable? Don't worry, Shimura Danzo has the same character as you, and will do anything to achieve his goals. Lee said lightly, for at least 3 or 5 years, he will not betray you, and will continue to provide you with experimental materials. How do you know Shimura Danzo so well? Orochimaru's eyes narrowed suddenly, a dangerous light flashed in his eyes, and he kept staring at Lee. Lee said with a smile, not only do I know him, I also know the reason why he was defeated by Sarutobi Hiruzen when the second generation of Hokage passed the throne. Hearing this, Orochimaru was also filled with curiosity. Why? Because Shimura Danzo failed the second generation Hokage's psychological test. Lee said, at that time, the second generation Hokage and many young ninjas were chased and killed by the two brothers, Jinzhou and Silverjiao. As long as someone led the two brothers away, they could survive. At that time, the second generation Hokage asked who dared to go out and be the victim. Quote. Speaking of which, Lee did not say anything. Because as long as you are not a fool, you can guess what happens next. Sarutobi Hiruzen chose to be the victim, but Shimura Danzo did not dare. So, Sarutobi Hiruzen became Hokage. Hokage is not only a symbol of strength, but also a symbol of duty and responsibility. At that time, what the second generation Hokage tested was the sense of responsibility. You know so much. Orochimaru laughed, and there was an inexplicable taste in his hoarse voice. That's all I can tell you. Lee shrugged and asked, is there anything else to ask? If not, I have to go back, otherwise Makoto will use the strength of the whole family to find me, and the whole Konoha village will be turned upside down by then. You should also know how powerful the Uchiha clan is. Quote. Hee, Brother Lee is really lucky. He is favored by the princesses of the Uchiha family. This is something that many people dream of but can't get. Orochimaru said with a smile. Mummy. Lee resolutely accepted the compliment. I'm all right, little brother, let's go. Orochimaru said. Lee nodded and turned to leave. However, just as Lee turned around, Orochimaru suddenly stretched out his right hand and grabbed it towards Lee's shoulder with lightning speed. Lee didn't notice it at all. Because Orochimaru's speed is too fast, as fast as a python coming out of its hole, people are caught off guard. However, just as Orochimaru's pale right hand was about to touch the surface of Lee's body, suddenly, he seemed to be aware of something. His expression changed slightly, and then he withdrew his hand without any hesitation. Under Orochimaru's stubborn gaze, there seemed to be a golden light flickering under the clothes on Lee's shoulders. Lee seemed to sense something, squeezed his shoulder with his right hand, then turned around, seeing Orochimaru still standing there. Lee politely said, "Goodbye." "Goodbye, Brother Lee." Orochimaru nodded lightly. So, he watched Lee leave. What the hell is that? Why does it make me feel so dangerous? When Lee left, Orochimaru's eyes suddenly became deep, like a pair of black holes, making people dare not look directly. Just now, he wanted to unknowingly leave a curse mark on Lee's body to threaten Lee. After all, Lee has his handle in his hand, and he must also have Lee's handle in his hand. Originally, he was confident and felt that with his own speed, Lee would definitely not notice. But unexpectedly, there seems to be something terrifying hidden in Lee's body. That thing, don't let him leave a curse mark on Lee's body. Orochimaru is very sure that just now, fortunately, he didn't touch Lee's body, otherwise, his fingers would be broken by now. No exaggeration at all. Could it be a tailed beast? Impossible. There is only one tailed beast in Konoha village, and that is Kyubi 9 Tails, and Kyubi 9 Tails is on the body of the little girl Jinchuriki column force of Uzumaki Kushina. Orochimaru fell into deep doubts and speculations. Furthermore, it is impossible for tailed beasts to protect human beings. Tailed beasts and human beings are like fire and water. They hope that it is too late for the human Jinchuriki column to die. How can they take the initiative to protect human beings? What secret does Ten have on this Lee? Why does he know so much? What the hell is he holy? Could it be that the second generation Hokage used some unknown forbidden technique to occupy his body? So, he is not Lee, but the second generation Hokage. It's impossible, the second generation Hokage wouldn't do such a cruel thing. Orochimaru couldn't figure it out, stood there in a daze.